Chapter 1231 Admit I'm Stronger. Chapter 1231 Admit I'm Stronger. Is he bluffing? Han Xinyan wasn't sure. The man before her was far too confident. Either he was truly confident, or he was an absolute madman. Fine then, we'll refine level 8 divine pills, she said solemnly. Right now, she was genuinely taking him seriously. She didn't dare to underestimate Ling Han anymore. I'm going to refine the 9 Emperor Golden Bell pill. This was also a level 8 divine pill, but it was inferior to the Berserk Blood Spirit pill both in terms of medicinal effects and in terms of refinement difficulty. After all, the Berserk Blood Spirit pill could almost be regarded as a level 9 divine pill. Thus, regardless of what pill she chose, its refinement difficulty definitely couldn't surpass the Berserk Blood Spirit pill. That being the case, her choice of pill naturally didn't matter too much. As long as Ling Han succeeded in refining the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, he would be crowned the victor, regardless of the quality of his pill. On the flip side, Ling Han would lose if his cauldron exploded and she succeeded in refining her pills. Please. Both of them started to prepare their ingredients. When Ling Han retrieved a red rain divine king fruit, a serious look appeared in Han Xinyan's beautiful eyes. Now that Ling Han had retrieved this kind of divine fruit, it was clear that he wasn't joking. Otherwise, the price of his joke would be far too high. Has he really grasped that ancient recipe? Can he truly refine the Berserk Blood Spirit pill? She found this notion absurd. However, for some reason, she had a slight feeling that Ling Han might succeed. This caused her to become a little discomposed. Our match hasn't even started yet, so why am I predicting my own defeat? The onlookers were all crowded outside the door. Moreover, there was a restriction that stopped their voices from traveling into the palace. This was to prevent them from disturbing the two competitors. Right now, Yun Yongwang and Kang Xiuyuan could only choose to trust Ling Han, even though they were still unable to accept that he had advanced another level in just half a year. Boom! Divine flames soared into the air as the two young alchemists began to refine their pills. Ling Han quickly entered a trance-like state. Among all the pills he had come across, the Berserk Blood Spirit pill was the most difficult to refine. Moreover, it was the limit of what he could refine. Thus, even he had to be extremely careful. Otherwise, a small mistake would undo all of his previous efforts. The refinement of level 8 divine pills would take an entire month. This tested not only one's patience and determination, but also the strength of one's origin power and divine sense. Refining level 8 divine pills was akin to battling at full power. How many people could battle at full power for an entire month? Any pause would result in their cauldron exploding. Thus, the higher the level, the fewer the alchemists. Ling Han read his mind of all unnecessary thoughts. This wasn't merely a match. The Berserk Blood Spirit pill was a pill that he needed at this moment, and thus him refining it was both to win the match and to benefit himself. Thus, he naturally had to treat it with utmost seriousness. During this month of refining, the onlookers came and went and came. Apart from alchemists, who had the patience to watch from beginning to end. Anyhow, this was truly a grand feast for alchemists. Witnessing the techniques of two level 8 alchemists was of immense help to them. When the final day arrived, almost everyone in the city squeezed over to witness the final results. Open! Ling Han and Han Xinyan slapped their cauldrons at almost exactly the same time. Peng! The lids of their cauldrons instantly flew up. This time, Ling Han didn't hold back anymore. He activated the 3 Fire Guide, his most familiar technique. Ah! Yun Yongwang and Kang Xiuyuan instantly gasped in shock. Their mouths hung so wide open that even an egg could be stuffed in. 3 Fire Guide. That's definitely the 3 Fire Guide, they exclaimed in their minds. However, the 3 Fire Guide was clearly the ultimate technique of their master. Moreover, he had only taught it to them too. Meanwhile, they hadn't gone around teaching it to other people in the lower realm. So, where had Ling Han learned it from? Perhaps, his master's intergenerational disciple? Xiu. Bringing with it a brilliant glow, a pill soared from Ling Han's cauldron. It danced about in the air. This was the Berserk Blood Spirit pill. He had succeeded. Han Xinyan took a single glance, and sighed in her mind. With her skills, she had known that Ling Han was definitely refining the Berserk Blood Spirit pill just by seeing that there was a red rain divine king fruit among his ingredients. Now that his pill had formed, the result of this match was clear. She had lost, and Ling Han had won. "I've lost," she said sincerely. The onlookers were stunned. Who could believe that Ling Han had actually become a level 8 alchemist? Moreover, he had defeated Han Xinyan, a prodigy among prodigies. The members of the Treasure Forest Pavilion were all frozen with shock. They had spent the past half a year waiting for that level 8 alchemist who was studying an ancient pill recipe in seclusion. However, he had remained in seclusion the entire time. Coincidentally, Han Xinyan had come to visit Lin Yuqi. Thus, Lin Yuqi asked for her help to challenge the Hanlin Pavilion. Han Xinyan was a renowned young alchemist, and there were all kinds of titles and feats attributed to her. Simply put, she was a prodigy who was born for alchemy. She was one of the 10 most talented alchemists in the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. Now, however, she had lost to an even younger alchemist. Unbelievable. This was absolutely unbelievable. Han Xinyan was indeed a proud individual. However, she wasn't one to swallow her words. She immediately brought Ling Han a cup of tea, then used her finger like a sword, and carved "I admit you're stronger" at his feet. A defeat was a defeat, and she took it on the chin. Ling Han nodded in his mind. This woman had a good character, and she was also extremely talented in alchemy. He felt an urge to take her as his 6th disciple. However, their alchemy level was identical at this moment, and they were also representing opposing forces. If he asked to take her as a disciple, perhaps everyone would roll their eyes in reply. He sipped some tea, and said, "We've completed our match, and I've also drunk my tea. So, farewell." "Wait." Han Xinyan called. She bit her lip, and said, "I'll definitely challenge you again." "Heh, no problem. However, that'll have to wait until when I'm free," Ling Han replied with a smile. He wasn't trying to avoid her challenge. Rather, his main focus was on cultivation, so he couldn't concentrate on alchemy all the time. Ling Han left with Yun Yongwang and Kang Xiu Yuan. The onlookers naturally dispersed as well. However, when the 3 of them arrived back at the Hanlin Pavilion, they immediately discovered that the number of customers had increased 5-fold compared to when they had left. Moreover, this was just the beginning. When they returned to the Hanlin Pavilion, Kang Xiu Yuan couldn't contain himself anymore, and he asked, "Senior Elder, dare I ask, did you use the 3 fire guide just then?" Ling Han grinned, and said, "Correct." Through his observation during the past half a year, in fact, it wasn't his observation, but Guang Yuan's and Zhu Wuju's observation, he determined that these 2 disciples had no relationship with the Cloud Phoenix sect. They most likely hadn't forgotten their roots. "Senior Elder, where did you learn this secret technique?" Yun Yongwang asked. "Where?" A look of reminiscence appeared on Ling Han's face, and he said, "I was the one who invented this technique." Ting, ting. Yun Yongwang and Kang Xiu Yuan instantly jumped up, expressions of fury on their face. He actually dared to claim their master's 3 fire guide as his own invention. This was far too shameless. Regardless of how much he had helped the Hanlin Pavilion, there were some things that couldn't be said, and there were some lines that couldn't be crossed. That was about their mastery was like a deity, like a true immortal. His name definitely couldn't be soiled. "I think it's time for Senior Elder to leave," Yun Yongwang said coldly. Chapter 1232 Ling Family's Widow. Chapter 1232 Ling Family's Widow. Kang Xiu Yuan's expression was also cold. Ling Han had indeed helped the Hanlin Pavilion immensely. However, even if it resulted in the Hanlin Pavilion's immediate collapse, they definitely couldn't let someone who had plagiarized their master remain in their store. This would be a sign of great disrespect to their master. Ling Han laughed loudly. He was extremely satisfied with his disciple's performance. "However," he said, "are you people trying to drive out your benefactor?" "We'll give you the necessary compensation," Kang Xiu Yuan said coldly. "Aren't you afraid that I'll join the Treasure Forest Pavilion?" Ling Han asked. "You two should know. If I join the Treasure Forest Pavilion, This store definitely won't last 10 days. It'll be about time to shut the store and call it a day. Heh, I wonder if you've heard of this phrase, it's better to die with honor than to survive with dishonor. Yun Wang said resolutely. Ling Han clapped his hands and said, is there really any need to take things so far? I simply made a claim. Sir, it's about time you left. We'll send the compensation to your residence in a few days, Kang Xiu Yuan said. His words made it clear that Ling Han wasn't welcome anymore. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I remember that was a cold winter's day. I was outside a restaurant, and I discovered a freezing child sitting out the front. I ordered a bowl of noodles for him, and he started to follow me from that moment onward. He would follow me no matter where I went. Kang Xiu Yuan involuntarily shuddered. There was a look of disbelief in his eyes as he stared at the man in front of him. That was how he and his master had met. He had been an orphan, and he had almost frozen to death. After receiving a bowl of noodles from Ling Han, he had started to follow him wherever he went. He had tried everything he could to become Ling Han's follower. In the end, Ling Han had been moved by his perseverance, and had finally taken him as a disciple. He hadn't betrayed Ling Han's hopes, either, and he had displayed an outstanding talent in alchemy. From that moment on, he began his journey as an alchemist. He had never told this story to anyone else. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Ling Han turned to Yun Wang and said, you were the young master of the Yun clan. However, you were dumped by your fiancé, so you came to acknowledge me as your master. You wanted to learn martial arts so that you could return one day and give that woman 2 solid slaps. Unexpectedly, however, your alchemy talent far surpassed your cultivation talent. In the end, you didn't become a cultivation elite, but instead became an alchemy grandmaster. Yong Wang, master still remembers the robe that you once made for me. You made it a size too large, and you ended up being the butt of your 3 brothers' jokes for a good half a year. Master. Yong Wang involuntarily exclaimed. However, he immediately noticed that something was off. How could this person be his master? Ling Han sighed and said, Master went to explore an ancient site, yet I ended up being killed. However, my soul managed to survive. 10,000 years later, I was reborn in the body of a youth. Yun Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan exchanged a glance. They were extremely delighted, yet they also found this hard to believe. One had to realize that the reincarnation flower was a precious treasure among precious treasures, even in the immortal realm. Only one reincarnation flower would blossom every 10 billion years. Yet, Ling Han was able to reincarnate in the lower realm? If that were true, his fortune was even better than that of a saint. Should we trust him? Ling Han chuckled, and then started to recount the bits and pieces from their hundreds of years together. Yun Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan became more and more astonished. Although these things weren't secrets, nor were they secret techniques, they were events that only their master and his 4 disciples should have known. Now that they heard these events being recounted by Ling Han, they became more and more convinced that he was genuinely their master. In fact, the most important proof was actually his alchemy skill. Apart from their master, who else could possess such supreme alchemy talent? If he were genuinely their master, advancing 1 level in just half a year wasn't impossible. Master. Yun Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan both kneeled down, tears streaming down their faces. Ling Han's heart also beat in excitement. He raised a hand and said, no need for such formalities. It's been 10,000 years, and Master is pleased to see that you're both safe and sound. I'm also pleased to see that you've both improved in cultivation and alchemy. Master, tears continued to stream down Yun Wang's and Kang Xiu Yuan's face. They were so emotional that they could barely speak. That's right, where are your 2 brothers? Ling Han asked. Out of his 4 disciples, Chen Ruijing was the eldest, Yun Wang was 2nd eldest, Kang Xiu Yuan was 3rd eldest, and the flamboyant Jiang Yufeng was the youngest. Yun Wang's expression changed slightly, and it was as if he were in 2 minds about whether he should speak or not. Ling Han noticed this, and he said, I know there was some friction between you brothers. I guessed this when I saw the 2 cold spear associations in the lower realm. What on earth happened? Yun Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan exchanged a glance. Yun Wang then said, I'll explain. He paused for a moment to collect his thoughts before saying, a few hundred years after Master died. He immediately stopped, and there was an awkward expression on his face as he glanced at Ling Han. Don't worry about it, Ling Han said with a smile. The 5 sects quickly revealed their true colors. They wanted to sacrifice the entire world. At that time, the elites of the world all gathered together to oppose the despicable plan of the 5 sects. However, even though heaven and earth had changed, allowing more elites to appear, the 5 sects had a far greater amount of resources. Not only that, but they had support from the immortal realm. Although we managed to kill a few immortals, we were still emphatically defeated in the end. Meanwhile, the daughter of a powerful figure from the Heaven's Sword Palace had come down to sightsee. However, she actually ended up falling in love with 4th brother. Ah! Ling Han couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. That flamboyant Jiang Yufeng had actually captured the heart of a noble beauty from the immortal realm? This was truly astonishing. Unexpectedly, 4th brother also fell in love with that woman. In fact, he even wanted us to follow him to the immortal realm. However, we naturally rejected him. It was during that time that us 4 brothers fell out with each other, Yun Wang said. We had initially planned to fight to the death in the lower realm. However, Master's wife No, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden took us into the immortal realm. We didn't dare to disobey her. Sure enough, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was already his wife in their minds. Her words were even more authoritative than his. Ling Han shook his head. He hadn't been able to defeat the heavenly phoenix divine maiden at that time. Now, however, he could probably defeat her. Where is she now? He asked. There was a hint of emotion in his voice. Although Master's wife. Although the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was born in a small world, her bloodline was supremely powerful. She became a core disciple after returning to the Cloud Phoenix sect, and she advanced to the Sun Moon tier after just 3,000 years. Right now, she's already reached the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, Kang Xiu Yuan replied. However, she was displeased with her sect's actions, so she announced her retirement after making several great contributions to the sect. Moreover, she calls herself. He paused to look at Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but feel annoyed, and he said, Brat, you dare to leave your master hanging? Although Kang Xiu Yuan had already lived for so many years, he still chuckled when he heard Ling Han call him a brat. Of course, in terms of relative age, a 10,000-year-old elite at the low extreme of the Sun Moon tier was indeed quite young. She calls herself the Ling family's widow, he said. Ling Han stroked his chin. That savage woman was actually calling herself his wife. How immodest. However, he liked it. Chapter 1233 Invitation from Milady. Chapter 1233 Invitation from Milady. Jiang Yufeng was naturally at the Heaven's Sword Palace at this moment. Meanwhile, Chen Ruijing was traveling and adventuring in all kinds of places. He was a cultivator, and thus he needed to seek improvement through battles. As for the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, she was currently living in seclusion in the Water Element Valley, which was around 1,500 kilometers from the Hanlin Pavilion. Ling Han decided to visit the heavenly phoenix divine maiden straight away. Toppling the 5 sects could wait until later. After all, this would be a relatively long process. However, he had already made this wife wait for 10,000 years, so he didn't want to make her wait for 1 second longer. He exited the Hanlin Pavilion. Just as he was about to set off, a horse-drawn carriage blocked his path. A woman in azure curtsied at him from within the carriage, and said, Grandmaster Ling, you have an invitation from Milady. Who? Ling Han asked in surprise. Grandmaster Ling, won't you find out once you get on the carriage? The woman in azure said with a smile. She had a beautiful disposition. Judging by her outfit, she was probably a maid. However, even a maid like her possessed such a captivating charm. Just how beautiful and seductive was her master? Ordinary people would definitely become lost in a boundless world of fantasies, and readily agree to enter the carriage so that they could witness the other lady's appearance. However, Ling Han was in no mood to do such a thing. He shook his head, and said, I'm fine. He waved his sleeve and strode off into the distance. Hey, hey, hey. The woman in azure hurriedly jumped off the carriage and blocked Ling Han's path. She puffed her shapely chest out, so much so that it almost touched Ling Han. Ling Han had no option but to take a step back. When women became unreasonable, men really had to be careful. Otherwise, if he were to come into contact with her chest, he would definitely be the one getting blamed for taking advantage of her. Definitely. Grandmaster Ling, Milady is one of the most breathtaking beauties in the world. Heaven knows how many talented men are lining up in the hopes of meeting her. However, whether or not Milady meets them is all up to her mood. The woman in azure seemed especially proud, and she continued, "Right now, Milady is going out of her way to invite you for a meeting, yet you're actually going to turn down her invitation? Aren't you afraid that Milady will feel sad?" "What does that have to do with me?" Ling Han asked indifferently. "You're not allowed to turn her down," the woman in azure said. She reached over to grab Ling Han, and said, "Grandmaster Ling, since you're not willing to get on by yourself, I have no option but to force you on." Boom! A formidable aura surged from her body. She was actually a Sun-Moon tier elite. Ling Han was astonished. A mighty Sun-Moon tier elite was actually working as a maid. However, he naturally wasn't afraid. He clenched his hand into a fist and punched at her. Because he had mastered the lightning sword technique and grasped a wisp of heaven's might, his fist was not only lightning quick, but also extremely destructive. Z. There was a chaotic dance of lightning. The woman in azure was stunned. However, it was already too late for her to pull back, and her slender hand collided with Ling Han's fist. Peng! There was a loud thud, and both of them stumbled back. This woman was at the late stage of the Sun-Moon tier. However, she wasn't a star genius, so her power was on the same level as Ling Han's. Yet, Ling Han had unleashed the power of heavenly tribulation, so the destructive power of his fist was far more astonishing. The slender hand of the woman in azure instantly became red and blooded. Who would have thought? Grandmaster Ling is actually a cultivation elite as well, the woman in azure exclaimed. She channeled a cultivation technique to stop her blood. There was a hint of surprise on her face, though she wasn't panicked. However, since this is Milady's wish, it's best that Grandmaster Ling obediently complies. Her eyes widened slightly. Wang. 2 suns and moons materialized behind her. However, they radiated an eerie cold, not a brilliant warmth. Ice and snow instantly formed in the surroundings. Suns and moons merely looked like the sun and moon in the sky. However, some people practiced ice element cultivation techniques, and thus their suns and moons naturally radiated with a bone-chilling cold. She had unleashed her suns and moons. Ling Han nodded in his mind. Sure enough, the overall level of cultivation on this planet was higher than on the Joint Peace planet. At least, he had only ever seen Venerable Trinity unleashing his eternal river in the galaxy that the Joint Peace planet belonged to. As for the others, they only knew how to unleash their power, not how to unleash their mountains and rivers or suns and moons. Anyhow, the bone-chilling cold of her aura was almost about to freeze Ling Han's blood and body. However, this wasn't enough to defeat him. Z. A dense web of lightning instantly erupted from his body, pushing the icy aura 9 meters from his body. "Ice spear," the woman in azure cried softly. A vast amount of icy air condensed to form an ice spear that measured around 3 meters in length. The ice spear viciously stabbed at Ling Han, and as it did so, whirls of frosty wind transformed into countless menacing ice blades. Ling Han tapped a finger in the air, and a profound sword intent that was imbued with the power of lightning surged toward the ice blades. Pa, 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 pa. The ice blades shattered into pieces. Ling Han stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and asked, "Are you done yet?" The woman in azure brandished her ice spear, and replied, "No." She charged over again, relentlessly stabbing with her spear, and even using it as a staff. Under the effects of her martial intent, streaks of divine patterns materialized on her ice spear, intertwining to form a brilliant glow. Ling Han humphed, and unleashed his full battle prowess. His fists continued to pummel the ice spear. Ka, ka, ka. Cracks started to appear on the ice spear, and after suffering yet another heavy blow, it finally shattered into pieces. Meanwhile, The woman in Azure's face was as white as a sheet. Her hair was disheveled, and she no longer appeared as beautiful and charming as before. She couldn't help but feel shocked. Ling Han was only at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, yet he was actually able to defeat her head-on. His strength was far too astonishing. However, she wasn't willing to admit defeat. She retrieved a divine seal, and was just about to slap it onto her body. Qing Luo, enough. An enchanting voice traveled out from the carriage. The owner of this voice was none other than the head of the Treasure Forest Pavilion's Big Trade City branch, Lin Yuqi. A fragrant breeze blew over, and the door to the carriage opened, revealing a breathtaking beauty. Her figure was perfect, and one couldn't help but become lost in fantasies upon seeing her. Moreover, it was clear that this woman knew how to take full advantage of her charm. She wasn't just standing there. Instead, her slender figure was leaning slightly such that the curves of her body were all accentuated to the extreme. Her beauty was truly intoxicating. "Grandmaster Ling, I'm not some terrifying beast. Are you afraid I'll bite?" she said with a soft laugh. She was as beautiful as a blossoming flower in the wind. Hearing her say this, Ling Han naturally couldn't ignore her and leave anymore. He smiled, and said, "Does Milady have something to tell me?" "Let's get on the carriage first," Lin Yuqi said with a charming smile. Ling Han hesitated briefly before nodding and following her to the carriage. Ling Yuqi turned around and entered the carriage first. She was wearing a red dress that hugged her figure tightly, and standing behind her, Ling Han could clearly see her willowy hips swaying back and forth. Meanwhile, her curvaceous bottom was also tightly hugged by her dress. He could see it swaying with each step she took, and it was truly mesmerizing enough to make one drool with lust. Ling Han had seen his fair share of beauties. Moreover, in terms of charm, Empress Luan Xing was 10 times more enchanting than her. However, in terms of knowing how to display one's beauty in the most seductive and provocative method, this woman definitely took the crown. Even he didn't dare to look too much. He was afraid that he would become too aroused. Chapter 1234, Seeing Another Bewitching Beauty. Chapter 1234, Seeing Another Bewitching Beauty. Lin Yuqi's each and every action was seductive and bewitching. Empress Luan Xing was born a stunning beauty, and even her silhouette was enough to draw people into endless fantasies. Meanwhile, this woman accentuated her charm through various kinds of small movements. She swayed her bottom left and right. This was so seductive that people would barely be able to control themselves. With each sway, the shape of her curvaceous bottom would be accentuated, revealing the breathtaking assets of this stunning beauty. If people saw this, they would feel an urge to reach over and caress her bottom so that they could personally experience its fullness, suppleness, and softness. Ling Han guarded his mind closely. This was another bewitching beauty. To his surprise, Lin Yuqi's hairstyle wasn't one of a married woman, even though the maid in Azure had referred to her as Milady. One. Generally speaking, married women would tie their hair into a bun. Young unmarried women definitely wouldn't adopt such a hairstyle. Lin Yuqi's silky black hair rolled down her back, only revealing a tiny bit of her snow-white neck. The silky black and snow-white formed an intense contrast. "This has nothing to do with me," Ling Han immediately said in his mind. Although she wasn't married, did that mean he could take her as his own? Clearly not. Thus, he naturally didn't need to take her charm to heart. The carriage was only so big, yet Lin Yuqi somehow managed to walk for a long time. She seared the image of her bewitching figure into Ling Han's mind. Only now did she turn around with a smile, and say, "Please sit, young Master Ling." Her smile was as beautiful as 100 blossoming flowers. The entire carriage seemed to become more radiant and warm. Ling Han smiled faintly as he sat down. He then asked, "Madam, for what reason did you invite me?" He was in a hurry to go to the Water Element Valley at this moment, so he truly didn't want to waste any time. Lin Yuqi almost jumped up in anger upon seeing the hint of impatience in his eyes. She was confident in her charm, and she enjoyed having people in the palm of her hand. She loved it when they became mesmerized with her, and she loved it when they embarrassed themselves or revealed the ugliness of their character. She never denied that she was a bewitching woman. This was just how aloof and heartless one she was. Who told her to be so beautiful and bewitching? Her beauty allowed her to do anything she wanted. However, Ling Han actually dared to feel impatient before her. This was a slap to her face. If this impatience had been on Ling Han's face, she could say with certainty that he was doing it on purpose, he was playing hard to get. If that were the case, he could be regarded as an experienced womanizer. However, there was an expression of calm on Ling Han's face. Meanwhile, that look of impatience was coming from his eyes. This led her to believe that he was truly impatient with her. Eyes didn't tell lies. Moreover, Lin Yuqi was a woman who had great experience in toying with men. He wasn't having any improper thoughts about her, and she could easily detect this fact. She was extremely ticked off. Lin Yuqi calmed herself down. How could a bewitching beauty like her fail in seducing a small youth? She flashed him a beautiful smile. This was a mesmerizing smile that could melt even hardened steel. "Must I have a reason to invite young Master Ling?" she asked lazily. It was as if her voice had little hands that tickled him softly, trying to arouse his flames of lust. Ling Han shook his head and said, "If there's nothing you want to say, then please excuse me for taking my leave." He stood up and turned around to leave. Oi! Oi! Lin Yuqi was genuinely about to explode in anger. She dashed forward at an incredible speed and blocked Ling Han's path. Ling Han's expression suddenly became serious. This breathtaking and seemingly provocative woman was actually an elite. In fact, he hadn't even seen her movements clearly. It was extremely likely that if she had suddenly attacked him, he would have been hit. However, her voluptuous breasts were right before him, almost about to touch him. Ling Han frowned, and had no option but to take a step back. He already had enough lovers, and he naturally wouldn't dump any of them. So, he definitely didn't want to take any new partners. Lin Yuqi squinted her eyes upon seeing this. Her eyes were each like a slit at this moment, yet they were still enough to capture any man in the world. She laughed in a silvery voice before asking softly, "What are you afraid of? Are you scared that I'll bite?" Holy **T. Ling Han nodded seriously, and said, "Madam, please watch yourself." Lin Yuqi let out a long and silvery laugh. Her breasts shook as she laughed, and they made one want to transform into a beast and leap onto her so that they could personally experience the size and sensation of her breasts. People all say that a concubine is better than a wife, and a lover is better than a concubine one. "He, want to experience someone else's wife," she murmured softly. Her voice was dripping with temptation. "Brat, submit to my charm. Once you show any sign of affirmation, see how I beat you to death. I'll then make you my slave, and have you become a coolie forever. Humph, that's the price for daring to lust over me." Ling Han smiled, and said, "Madam, you've had too much to drink. You're really quite drunk. Alright, I've got no time for such games. If you don't allow me to leave, I'll have no option but to destroy your carriage." Lin Yuqi was astounded. This man had rejected her yet again. Woo! She suddenly sat down in sorrow and started to sob. "What are you playing at now? I didn't touch a single hair of yours, so why are you acting like someone harassed you? The less time I spend with this woman the better. Time to leave." Ling Han was just about to leave, yet there was suddenly a blur in front of his eyes. Lin Yuqi, who had been squatting on the floor and sobbing just then, had blocked his path again. The strength of this woman was truly profound. Ling Han hadn't noticed her movement at all. "You're bullying me," Lin Yuqi sobbed. However, she was a seductive beauty to begin with, so her sobbing simply made people feel she was extremely pitiful. They would more so feel an intense urge to leap over and conquer her. This kind of high and mighty noblewoman can best stimulate men's desire to destroy and conquest. Men will yearn to rip her clothes off and make her kneel under their fuck. Ling Han grimaced as he suddenly came to his senses. This woman was far too enchanting. She had made his thoughts wander so far. He hurriedly thought about Empress Luanxing. Once her stunning appearance appeared in his mind, Lin Yuqi instantly lost her charm and luster. She appeared especially ordinary now, and nothing she did could make him feel aroused. The Empress can actually be used as a mind-purifying medicine. This is brilliant. Lin Yuqi clicked her tongue in wonder. "I've already pulled out all my tricks, Yet you actually seem disgusted. She was truly stumped at this moment. Could it be that she actually had to strip? She was merely playing with men's emotions. However, she had no desire to sacrifice herself for such games. Young Master Ling, please sit, she said with a serious expression. Was there still any trace of tears on her seductively beautiful face? Ling Han was almost driven mad. Are we that familiar with each other? Is it really all right for you to play around like that? However, the strength of this woman was truly profound. If she insisted on making him stay, there was no way that Ling Han could leave, unless he used his Black Tower. However, Ling Han had become more cautious after learning about the Celestial Realm, and he more so didn't want to expose the secret of his Black Tower. What kind of existence was the Black Tower? The reincarnation tree needed 12 trillion years to mature in the outside world, yet this exorbitant amount of time was cut down to 3 years in the Black Tower. Although the reincarnation tree's effects hadn't reached its peak yet, it was still extremely heaven-defying. This would probably be a precious treasure even in the celestial realm, right? However, he still had yet to reach the Genesis tier. So, wouldn't he be seeking death if he allowed beings of the celestial realm to find out about his Black Tower? Chapter 1235, Guest Elder. Chapter 1235, Guest Elder. What can I do for you, madam? Ling Han asked in a deep voice. He did not even know who she was at this point. Lin Yuqi smiled beautifully, and answered, I am the shopkeeper of the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Ling Han was a little curious. Such a bewitching vixen whose abilities were unfathomable was actually the shopkeeper of a pharmacy. He mocked her internally, yet showed nothing in his expression, and said, so it is shopkeeper Lin. TSK, 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 I do not like this form of address. Lin Yuqi shook her head, and sat down in an incredibly graceful position. Then, she crossed her legs, and rose up a long leg from the high slit in her skirt. It was slender, delicate, and as fair as ivory. Because the inside of this carriage was furnished very lavishly, and a thick fur carpet was laid out on the floor, she did not even wear any shoes, and showed off one of her beautiful feet. Her 5 delicate toenails were painted bright red, contrasting sharply with the fairness of her beautiful foot. If it was someone with some unique fetish, they would definitely want to kneel down and lick that foot. What was more fatal was that she was even lightly waving her leg, and the waves of fragrance spreading out from her caused one's eyes to involuntarily sneak into her skirt, wanting to see even more of the beautiful scenery. Unfortunately, they would only be able to see a little bit of a fair thigh. Why don't you call me big sister? Lin Yuqi pursed her lips over a finger, her teeth as white as snow and her eyes hazy, causing one to be drunk on her charm. Madam Lin. Ling Han was unmoved. Big sister Lin would work too. Lin Yuqi possessed an indomitable tenacity. Madam Lin. Ling Han insisted. Lin Yuqi couldn't help but sigh. She had really never seen a man like this, being so cold and apathetic, which filled her with some curiosity. She knew that when a woman began to be curious about a man, it was a dangerous signal, and it was very possible that she would be lost because of that. However, she was confident that she would definitely be able to control herself, causing him to be lost in her charms instead. Fine then. Lin Yuqi finally made no further insistence on the address. Does little brother Han know how much trouble you would attract after successfully concocting the Berserk blood spirit pill? A muscle twitched in Ling Han's cheek. This woman had not compromised in the least. What did she mean by fine? She no longer requested him to call her big sister, yet addressed him as little brother Han. Wasn't it the same? He couldn't bother to argue the point with her, as that would only get them further and further off topic. Furthermore, this woman was obviously an expert at bringing the conversation off topic, so he could not allow her to mislead him. What kind of trouble? He asked. The Berserk blood spirit pill can boost up a sun-moon tier by a sub-minor level, and has been called the holy pill of the sun-moon tier. As long as they have not reached the peak stage of the consummate level of sun-moon tier, they would definitely target little brother Han, Lin Yuqi said sweetly, displaying her enchantment and seductiveness in front of Ling Han without the slightest care. Ling Han smiled, and asked, since that is the case, then wouldn't those sun-moon tiers be polite to me, and treat me as a respected guest? Lin Yuqi laughed loudly with abandon, once more allowing Ling Han's eyes to fully enjoy the beautiful sight of her heaving curves. She shook her head and asked, "Little brother Han does not have any background, and the Hanlin Pavilion is only a small place, so how could it possibly intimidate them enough? Once the news spreads out, it won't take too long, and little brother Han should soon be captured and forced to concoct alchemical pills all day." Little brother Han doesn't think that just because alchemists have outstanding status, they would be able to go anywhere in this world, right? Of course not. The reason why alchemists had outstanding status was because the cultivators had need of them. Since this status had been given to them by cultivators, whether they recognized this kind of lofty status would also have to depend on the mood of the cultivators. An alchemist without any background to support him was really only a tool that could be used to concoct alchemical pills. Ling Han smiled and asked, "Then what does Madam suggest?" "Join the Treasure Forest Pavilion," Lin Yuqi said, her face suddenly serious. Previously, she had looked so seductive, looking like she wanted to entrance him to death, but then she suddenly became so formal and was incredibly serious. This kind of difference was too big, and Ling Han was slightly unable to accept it. Ling Han shook his head and said, "Though the Treasure Forest Pavilion is a powerful force and can reach the higher-ups, I cannot possibly leave the Hanlin Pavilion." Lin Yuqi broke into an entrancing smile again and said, "I did not request that little brother Han leaves the Hanlin Pavilion. Since little brother Han can become the senior elder of the Hanlin Pavilion, why can you not multitask and be a guest elder of the Treasure Forest Pavilion as well?" Ling Han was surprised. This was indeed a big gift. The Treasure Forest Pavilion was indeed a massive entity, its branches spread all over the Cloud Apex planet. Even the Crimson Flames Emperor had to give them some face. Then, with this seal of protection, what other Sun Moon tier would dare touch a single hair on Ling Han's head? However, it was not that Ling Han was worried that a powerful force would truly capture him and force him to keep concocting alchemical pills, but rather thought of the 5 sects. The 5 sects managed to survive for so many years in the immortal realm, and had refined the lower realm into the realm pill so many times. How could it be that there was really no one who knew about in the whole immortal realm? Behind them, there might be an even stronger force that was covering for them. If Ling Han was all by himself, then after he clashed against the 5 sects, and the latter was no match for him, they would definitely seek help from the force supporting them. However, if Ling Han also drew out the seal of protection from the Treasure Forest Pavilion, then would the force behind the 5 sects still dare move? Even if the 5 sects did not have such a force to support them, they would also have some kind of allies, wouldn't they? The Treasure Forest Pavilion was sufficient to intimidate these people, and force them to stay out of this matter. Not bad, not bad. This identity was very useful. Thinking so, Ling Han nodded, and answered, "Then, I shall gladly accept." "Thank you, madam." Lin Yuqi smiled sweetly, then raised a single finger, and said, "However, I have one condition." Ling Han nodded. She naturally would not do him a big favor like this for no reason, so it was very natural that she would have conditions. He asked, "What condition?" If it was nothing too demanding, he would agree. However, if she wanted him to surrender himself, that was absolutely impossible. This condition of Lin Yuqi's was not the slightest bit XXX. Choose either condition. 1. Concoct a berserk blood spirit pill for me every 10 years, or 2. Teach the method of concoction to that girl, Xinyan. These 2 conditions could really not be considered simple. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then asked, "Madam can get hold of the fruits of the Red Rain Divine King tree?" This was the crucial ingredient for concocting the berserk blood spirit pill. Without this main ingredient, all other ingredients would be wasted. If I couldn't, how would I possibly dare to offer such a condition? Lin Yuqi asked, filled with confidence. Ling Han nodded slightly, and then said, "Fine. I shall teach the method of concoction to Miss Han. In the case of the first condition, he would have to be tied to the Treasure Forest Pavilion for his whole life, so it would be best that he chose the second. Though teaching another to concoct an alchemical pill would require a very long period of time, it would get things done once and for all. Moreover, he only had to copy down the pill recipe and pass it to Han Xinyan, and when she had more or less grasped it, he would take out a bit of time to guide her along. To him, The time spent would not be very long. Yet Lin Yuqi was slightly disappointed. Ling Han's answer had once again proved that her charms were ineffective, or he should have chosen the first condition. Then, wouldn't he be able to see her a few more times? This damn brat, I don't believe that you won't fall for me. Chapter 1236, Where is the Beauty? Chapter 1236, Where is the Beauty? Finally, Lin Yuqi allowed Ling Han to get off the carriage. She didn't need to rush the temptation. Fuck. However, when Ling Han had alighted from the carriage, he couldn't help but shout a curse loudly. When he had been conversing with Lin Yuqi, he didn't know where the carriage had carried him off to. The place he alighted in was actually a dense forest, and he couldn't spot any signs of the city at all. Women were indeed petty. That azure-robed maidservant obviously bore a secret grudge against him, and had thus steered the carriage to who knew where, then tossed him out. Wasn't this a deliberate trap for him? He shook his head, and jumped onto the tip of a tree. After observing for a while, he first headed in a specific direction. When he came to a small town, after making some inquiries, he finally found out that this place was actually more than 800 miles away from Big Trade City. That carriage was really quite fast. They didn't seem to have been traveling all that long, did they? Ling Han decided to simply not return to Big Trade City. In any case, his aim was Water Element Valley, and coincidentally, after he left Big Trade City, he just happened to have to travel in this direction too. Hence, not only was he not lost, he had instead gotten a free ride. If the azure-robed woman found out, wouldn't she explode in fury? Ling Han laughed, and set off. After only 2 days, Ling Han had arrived at the Water Element Valley. According to the information provided by Kang Xiu Yuan and Yun Yong Wang, he arrived at a place in the valley. There was a steep waterfall in this place, and it was covered by peaceful flowers. There was also a small courtyard, and it was like a hidden place of peace and serenity. This was where the heavenly phoenix divine maiden lived in seclusion. Ling Han couldn't help but feel excited. He strode towards the courtyard as he thought of what he would first say when he saw the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. As his thoughts danced, he arrived in front of the main doors. He raised his hand, and was just about to knock when he slightly started as a powerful feeling of anxiety suddenly rose up in his heart. However, he merely paused, and still continued the action of knocking. Knock, knock, knock. After a while, the sound of footsteps was heard from within. Yet Ling Han's brow was slightly creased. That was because these footsteps were not just one person's, but rather 3's, and they were very jumbled up. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was living in seclusion on her own, so how could there be 3 pairs of footsteps? This was not normal. Instantly, his eyes froze over, and a powerful killing intent rose up in him. If anyone dared harm the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, he would truly commit a massacre without the slightest hesitation. The wooden doors opened, and 3 people appeared at the doorway. They were all men, and were clad in battle armor. It was clear that these suits of armor were slightly old and worn, and there were signs of blood on them as well, exuding an air of aggression and martial force. Furthermore, these 3 men looked to be in their 30s, and wore serious expressions, with an air of unswerving determination characteristic of soldiers. "Who are you?" a man asked, with an arrogance that came from one with a high social position. This man should be a high-ranking military officer in the army, which was why he behaved like general looking down on a foot soldier from the moment he spoke, a powerful forcefulness in his tone. Ling Han was unmoved, and merely asked calmly, "And who are you people? How dare you?" The other 2 men drew part of the sabers at their waists simultaneously. Jiang, a crisp sound was heard, bringing a frightening air of violence with them. That was definitely a violent aura that could only be born from years of experience on the battlefield. The man in the center stretched out a hand and pressed down, preventing the other 2 from taking any further action. Then, he turned to Ling Han and said, "I am the left vanguard subordinate to Great General Xie, Ma Zhong." "Who are you? Speak your name." "Great General Xie? Left vanguard?" Ling Han was surprised. He knew that these 3 people were all soldiers, but what he did not understand was how had the heavenly phoenix divine maiden gotten involved with the army. If that wasn't the case, then why would these 3 people have appeared here? He paused for a moment, and then said, I am Ling Han, and have come here to seek an old friend. May I know what Lord Ma has come here for? Humph, even you dare to mind the business of others, one soldier rebuked, though he did not draw his saber this time. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, This is not the battlefield, so there is no need to use the same attitude that you adopt in the army. Humph, the heavenly phoenix maiden has disappeared. Since you call yourself her old friend, we can just ask you. Where has she gone? Ma Zhong stared at Ling Han, an astonishing killing intent exuding from his eyes, looking like he would be drawing his saber at the slightest disagreement. The heavenly phoenix maiden had disappeared. Ling Han's heart clenched. And why were these three people so determined to seek the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and whose command were they under? His expression turned cold as well. This was his reverse scale, which he could not allow others to touch. I would like to know as well. Why are you people looking for my friend? He uttered darkly. Subdue him. Ma Zhong did not answer, and directly commanded his subordinates to move. Shua, the two soldiers instantly raced out. They were definitely not ordinary soldiers. Otherwise, how could they possibly be in the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier? When they made their moves, the powerful force of the Sun-Moon tier spread out, which was incredibly shocking. Yet Ling Han could not even bother himself to parry. He merely gave a humph, and a sliver of heaven's might channeled out. Instantly, the two gave a muffled grunt, and couldn't even manage to keep hold of their sabers. With a clink, the sabers fell onto the ground, and the two men directly flopped onto the ground. They couldn't help but be shocked. Ling Han was only in the low extreme as well. Moreover, he was only in the early stage, yet they couldn't even manage to use a single move in front of him. This gap was too overwhelmingly big. Ma Zhong's eyes suddenly exploded with an astonishing fighting spirit. Ling Han's abilities had provoked him, making him feel as if he had returned to the battlefield and encountered a frightening opponent. Why are you seeking the heavenly phoenix maiden? Ling Han asked again. This time, he did not hide his abilities in the slightest. A frightening aura rolled out as if a king had descended. Brat, you are too arrogant. Ma Zhong humphed, drew out his saber, and charged out. Shua, bright light exploded, and shot out towards Ling Han. Ling Han clenched his fist, and greeted the incoming saber light with a punch. Peng, when his fist landed on the saber light, an incredible light exploded. Peng, two soldiers were instantly sent flying, and underneath the massive wave of power, the doors to the courtyard were also destroyed in a single instant. Ling Han was enraged, and exclaimed, Bastard, you actually dare destroy this place. He raised his fists and threw a series of consecutive punches that landed on Ma Zhong. Ma Zhong was both furious and shocked. He wasn't the only one who was causing fuck damage in this place, okay? Didn't Ling Han move as well? And he actually dared to blame him. This was really a case of a monk insulting a bald man. Still, this brat was practically a freak. He was obviously only in the early stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so how could his battle prowess not be inferior to his in the least? It should be known that he himself was in the peak stage of the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, and his power was much stronger than Ling Han's. It was just that the latter actually had a frightening intimidation, causing him to keep performing abnormally, unable to fully exhibit his power, and he could only bring things to a draw. This was too shocking. When did such a young king tier appear in the Imperial Empire? Lose, he called out loudly as he brandished his saber in a series of mad blows. He was a soldier that had years of experience in the battlefield, and the thing he lacked the least was fighting spirit. Humph. Ling Han threw one punch after another, which landed madly on Ma Zhong. Peng, peng, peng. The two were engaged in a fierce battle. One had stronger power, but the other possessed a sliver of heaven's might, and the victor was actually undecided. However, this courtyard naturally became very unfortunate, shattered into bits by the push and pull of power, and had completely turned into ruins. Chapter 1237 Whereabouts of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Chapter 1237 Whereabouts of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. After battling for quite a while, Ling Han and Ma Zhong stopped fighting at the same time. Neither of them had been serious, and they were wary of each other as well. Who knew what trump cards the other had up his sleeve? Brat, we will meet again. Ma Zhong brought the two soldiers with him and turned to leave. Of course we will meet again. You still have to rebuild this courtyard for me. Ling Han called out behind him. Ma Zhong almost stumbled. This brat was really keeping this in his mind constantly. Fuck, it wasn't just him at fault here. Ling Han watched the other party leave, and did not pursue. Obviously, he had also missed his aim, and did not know where the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was. This was the reason why Ling Han had not continued to fight with him. Furthermore, he already knew who he was, in any case a subordinate of Great General Xie. Great General Xie? It should be Xie Qian, one of the 4 great generals of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. Rumor had it that he was an elite of the Eternal River tier, but his exact cultivation level was unknown. If this kind of elite did not choose to reveal it himself, who would be able to estimate his cultivation level? Since that was the case, he could run, but he couldn't hide. Ling Han turned around. Perhaps Kang Xiuyuan and Yun Yongwang would know where the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had gone, or perhaps she might have even gone to the Hanlin Pavilion, and he had just missed her. 2 days later, he came back to Big Trade City. Master! Master! Once Kang Xiuyuan saw him, he immediately called out to him, his expression filled with nervousness and panic. What is it? Ling Han asked. A letter from Mistress. Kang Xiuyuan handed a letter over. Ling Han's heart was filled with worry in the first place, so he hurriedly snatched the letter. As his eyes swept over the letter, he soon found out the gist of the story. The matter was actually very simple. The Cloud Phoenix sect expressed the intention to develop relations with Great General Xie to increase their status. But as a powerful elite of the Eternal River tier, who would take note of a force that was only of the Sun Moon tier? Then, since they could not develop relations with the Great General Xie directly, they could only do so in a more roundabout way. They sought out the 7th grandchild of the Great General Xie, Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai was an extremely outstanding young man among the younger generation of the Xie clan. He had only cultivated for about 100,000 years, and he was already at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and now had some say in the Xie clan. If he could break through to Heavenly Body tier as well, he would definitely become an influential person in the Xie clan. Thus, the Cloud Phoenix sect wanted to form an alliance by marriage with the Xie clan, and the other party was this Prince Xie. Xie Donglai came on their invitation, and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was also tricked into coming by her sect. As a result, Xie Donglai took a fancy to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden with a single look, and after returning to the imperial capital, sent a messenger to deliver the message that he wished to take the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden as a concubine not many days later. For a crucial heir like him, the choice of the candidate for main wife naturally would not be his decision to make. It would rather be used to secure an ally that could be of aid to the Xie clan through marriage, for example a loyal subordinate, or a state official of equal authority. Thus, the small Cloud Phoenix sect's member naturally could not possibly be a candidate for main wife, but at least she would be married officially as a concubine, which guaranteed quite a high status as well. From the perspective of the Cloud Phoenix sect, this was a step up the social ladder. The Cloud Phoenix sect naturally agreed happily, but how could the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden be willing? She called herself the Ling family's widow, and that was her stand and a kind of determination. However, though she presently had the abilities to stand against the Cloud Phoenix sect, compared with a colossal entity like the Xie clan, she was indescribably weak. Hence, she decided to go to the two-realm battlefield. Only that was a place the power of the Xie clan was unable to reach. When Kang Xiuyuan received the letter, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden should have already reached the two-realm battlefield. Ling Han was furious. They actually wanted to force his wife to remarry. Wasn't this cuckolding him? This Cloud Phoenix sect was really worthless, forcing an honest girl into prostitution for their own benefit. That Xie Donglai too had dared to try and snatch his wife. If he didn't castrate him 10 times, it would not be enough to vent his fury. I plan to immediately go to the two-realm battlefield. Ling Han decided promptly. The two-realm battlefield was really a slaughterhouse of life. Every year, every month, or even every day, the number of people who battled to the death there were uncountable. Though the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's bloodline was strong, and she had also reached the consummate level of the sun-moon tier, in the two-realm battlefield, her abilities were really insufficient. If the heavenly phoenix divine maiden suffered the slightest injury, he would definitely come back and skin Xie Donglai. As for the Cloud Phoenix sect, needless to say, its fate would be destruction by his hand anyway. Master, we shall go as well, Kang Xiu Yuan and Yun Yong Wang hurriedly proclaimed. Ling Han shook his head and said, the two of you aren't warriors, so why are you joining in on the excitement? Concoct alchemical pills obediently, and if the two of you have not yet advanced to become level 6 alchemists when I return, just wait to be beaten. Ah! The two cried out desperately. It would need at least a few millennia of accumulation to advance from level 5 to level 6, they were still a far way off. Ling Han did not care. Now that the conflict between the Hanlin Pavilion and Treasure Forest Pavilion had been resolved, his presence was no longer important. However, he had to be true to his word. He decided to first make a trip to the Treasure Forest Pavilion and teach the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill to Han Xinyan, and then head out to the two-realm battlefield. In any case, it was just a short trip. Yun Yong Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan naturally backed Ling Han's idea to find the mistress. They both nodded. On one hand, they had to protect the Hanlin Pavilion and complete Ling Han's missionto by as much level 5 godly metal as possible, and on the other, they had to work hard on their alchemy skills so that they could advance to become level 6 alchemists. Ling Han set out all by himself, and did not alert his two brothers. He did not bring his disciple, Ding Ping, either. He even abandoned his 4 followers in Big Trade City. The two-realm battlefield was really too dangerous. Only the Azura Demon Emperor and old Ginseng were still left in the Black Tower. To others, the Black Tower did not have spiritual qi, so it was not a suitable place for cultivation, and it only had the reincarnation tree to aid the comprehension of Tao. But for old Ginseng, it was different because he himself was a Tao cultivated from a godly medicine of heaven and earth, and the Black Tower had the ability to speed up the growth of plants. For him, though it was not as exaggerated as that, its benefits were still quite big. Thus, he liked to stay in the Black Tower to absorb that kind of power when he had nothing else to do. Moreover, he liked to root himself under the reincarnation tree, and could comprehend Tao while he was at it. His improvement was very fast, and he looked just about ready to advance into the sun-moon tier. Of course, if you wanted old Ginseng to focus and work hard on cultivation, that was impossible. He would frequently come out and tease girls and women in Big Trade City. As long as they were the slightest bit beautiful, practically none had managed to escape from old Ginseng's demonic claws. Ling Han soon arrived at the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Lin Yuqi had obviously made arrangements for him. The moment he appeared, the staff in the shop immediately greeted him respectfully as Elder Ling, and were incredibly reverent. Yo, have you missed me? Lin Yuqi walked in a waft of fragrance, directly forcing her way to stand right in front of Ling Han, her proud breasts only 1 or 2 inches away from Ling Han at most. Ling Han looked at anywhere but her, and said, I have come to look for Han Xinyan to teach her the pill recipe of the Berserk Blood Spirit pill. Lin Yuqi couldn't help but get irritated. In Ling Han's eyes, couldn't she even compare that inexperienced, flat-chested little girl? Calm down, she advised herself, then waved a hand, and had someone bring Ling Han to find Han Xinyan as she scrambled her brains. How would she be able to enlighten a blockhead? The difficulty was huge. Led by a maidservant, Ling Han entered into a backyard. This was obviously private territory, and only multiple beautiful maidservants would occasionally appear, with no further signs of any outsiders. Chapter 1238, Two-Realm Battlefield. Chapter 1238, Two-Realm Battlefield. Miss Han is Madam's distant relative. The young maid leading Ling Han in had a very gossipy nature, and unendingly talked about Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan. In short, the two women had a very close relationship, or Han Xinyan would not have come to such a small city for no reason. When she had brought Ling Han to a courtyard, the maid curtsied, and said, Miss Han should be presently meditating inside. I do not dare disturb her, So it would be better if you yourself knock on the door, young master. As she said so, she turned around and left. This was really irresponsible. Ling Han knocked on the doors. Knock, knock, knock. After a while, he heard footsteps. Squeak, the doors were opened, revealing an almost naked person. It was Han Xinyan. Fuck, even she wanted to tempt him? Ah! Han Xinyan suddenly released a sharp shriek. Bang, the doors immediately closed again. Ling Han rubbed his nose. He had almost been hit by the doors when they closed. After only a short while, the doors were opened once more, and Han Xinyan was aggressively rushing out. This time, she had naturally dressed herself, her hand wielding a sword, and she slashed out at Ling Han. How dare you, you shameless bee ********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* dodged. Though this woman was indeed outstandingly talented in alchemy, in martial arts, she did not have corresponding abilities. Ling Han merely sent out the heaven's might in a slight wave, and her body weakened. How could she possibly have the ability to attack further? Do not misunderstand. I have just come to teach you the method of concoction for the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, he said, smiling. Han Xinyan paused, delivered a few more slashes, and only then withdrew her long sword regretfully. She rebuked, Ling Han sighed, and said, I didn't do anything to you, right? I was just normally knocking on the door, and you were the one who came out completely undressed. Han Xinyan couldn't help but flush. She had a bad habit, and that was that she liked to remove all her clothing when she was studying a pill recipe. Only then would she have inspiration. Moreover, this was the internal courtyard of Lin Yuqi, where there was not one man. Hence, she naturally had no fear that she would be exposing her nakedness. But who'd have known that a man would have appeared all of a sudden like this, and seen her completely? This was so humiliating. She glared fiercely at Ling Han, and said, This matter. Never speak of it again. She was not an unreasonable person, and knew that the fault did not lie with Ling Han. Yet, she was still extremely displeased internally. A woman with small breasts would also have little tolerance, Ling Han thought. This woman was really flat-chested. In truth, even when she had undressed completely, he had not seen much. If it was merely looking at her breasts, she could absolutely disguise herself as a man. All right. He went with the flow, and also feared that she would hang on to him, saying something along the lines of him having seen her completely exposed, so she could marry no one but him. He directly threw out a book, and said, This is the pill recipe of the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill. You can study it on your own first. I have some matters to handle, so I have to leave Big Trade City for a while. If you have anything you do not understand, you can note it all down, and ask me when I return. Han Xinyan was irritated. They were both level 8 alchemists, yet he looked like he was teaching her. Did he think of her as a junior? But now that she had obtained the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, she couldn't bring herself to become hostile with Ling Han. She could only store away the pill recipe in much displeasure. At this time, she really dared not declare stubbornly that she refused to accept the pill recipe. Ling Han waved a hand, and left for the two-realm battlefield. He set out to the frontier grounds of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. That was where the two-realm battlefield was located. The Netherworld and the Immortal Realm had one similarity in this place. The Netherworld could invade the Immortal Realm through this place, while the Immortal Realm could also enter the Netherworld from here. The cloud-piercing shuttle was no longer suitable for traveling around one planet. Thankfully, Ling Han had already grasped the star-plucking step, and added with the lightning technique he had cultivated from studying the heavenly tribulation, his present speed was extremely amazing. In a mere 20 days, he had already reached the two-realm battlefield. Before he had set out, he had first refined a Berserk Blood Spirit Pill. He had spent a whole 3 days to digest the medicinal effects completely, and the red sun within his body suddenly doubled in size, allowing him to advance into the middle stage of the low extreme. Why was this kind of alchemical pill called Berserk? Because the medicinal effects were indeed berserk. Even if Ling Han's physique had reached the extent of level 6 godly metal, the force had still caused lacerations on his flesh, and he had even broken a few of his godly bones. No wonder that if they weren't in the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, other Sun-Moon tier cultivators had to take this medicine only under the care of other elites. Otherwise, they would only explode from the berserk medicinal effects. If they had died from merely taking an alchemical pill, that would have been too much of a waste. After taking the pill, with Ling Han's sensitivity as the alchemy emperor, he discovered that there was alchemic poison left within his body. If he took another berserk blood spirit pill, then not only could it not possibly produce the effect of increasing his cultivation level, it would instead cause him to die of poison. What kind of concept was one berserk blood spirit pill? It would boost a Sun-Moon tier by a sub-minor level. What kind of damage would that produce if it exploded? It was practically equivalent to a full power blow from a heavenly body tier. What kind of Sun-Moon tier would be able to endure such poison? Ling Han had no solution for it. He kept observing the dispersion rate of the alchemic poison, and came to a conclusion. This was probably going to take as long as 3 years. This also meant that if he did not have any special means to resolve the alchemic poison in his body, he would have to wait 3 years before he could take a second berserk blood spirit pill. But just think, that meant it would help him reach the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier in 50 years at most. What a terrifying improvement rate this was. How long was the lifespan of a Sun-Moon tier? They would have 4 million years to live at consummate level. A whole 4 million years could be cultivated within 50 years. Wasn't that terrifying enough, and wasn't that fast enough? Of course, it could not be compared to Hu Niu's speed. The overall level of cultivation of the celestial realm was even higher, producing Genesis tier cultivators like the immortal realm produced shattering void tiers. It could not be claimed to be easily done, but it probably wasn't all that difficult, either. On the immortal realm's side of the two-realm battlefield, a bridgehead stronghold had been established, and its name was Wolffang City. The Wolffang City existed to provide a resting place for the soldiers fighting with the Netherworld, a kind of sanctuary, and at the same time, also a stronghold. Once Wolffang City was conquered, the armies of the Netherworld would march unchallenged and wreck the entire Cloud Apex planet. There were only 2 imperial empires on the Cloud Apex planet, the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. Thus, the main forces here naturally comprised of the armies from the 2 great imperial empires. Aside from them, all cultivators and demonic beasts that had reached the immortal level were duty-bound to join the two-realm battlefield. There were a few well-known troops here, like the Purple Moon Army under the Purple Moon Divine Maiden, the Wind Riders Army under the Wind Rider Divine King, and the Holy Army under the Wide Travel Monk King. These troops had all established their reputation for being firm and powerful in the Great War between the Netherworld and the Immortal World. When they came to the two-realm battlefield, a cultivator could freely choose one out of 2 options. Firstly, he could join an official army and join the war as a soldier, and when he had accumulated enough merit points, he could retire from the army with glory. Secondly, he could also act alone and hunt down the beings from the Netherworld. This similarly would accumulate merit points. Merit points were the unique currency in the two-realm battlefield. Though resistance against the invasion from the Netherworld was right and just, they couldn't compel others to throw away their heads and spill their blood with just one word, right? Hence the idea of merit points. One could use merit points to redeem various types of alchemical pills, god tools, and even cultivation techniques, or others. And once the total value of merit points had been accumulated to a certain extent, one could choose to retire from the army. It had already been said that joining the two-realm battlefield to resist the invasion of the Netherworld was the duty of all cultivators of the immortal realm. Everyone had to perform this military service, and if they did not perform it when the time limit had passed, if they were caught, their only fate was execution. Chapter 1239, Lord Rabbit. Chapter 1239, Lord Rabbit. Usually, 100,000 years after breaking through to the Mountain River tier, one would have to join the two-realm battlefield. However, some people were prodigies who might have advanced into the Sun-Moon tier after 30,000 to 40,000 years. Hence, there was a rule that those who had advanced into the Sun-Moon tier had to enlist in the army to resist the enemy forces within 1 million years of their breakthrough. What about those that were slightly more genius, and had advanced into the heavenly body tier within 1 million years after that? Then they would have to join the army within 10 million years from then. In short, you had to perform your military service unless your abilities were strong enough to oppose the two great empires. This time limit was meant to give geniuses a long enough time for them to develop and grow to avoid them dying needlessly on the two-realm battlefield. The most useful item on the two-realm battlefield was merit points. How was one to retire from military service? By depending on merit points. Mountain River tiers needed 100 merit points, Sun Moon tiers needed 10,000, whereas Heavenly Body tiers needed 1 million, and Eternal River tiers required a frightening 100 million. Why was there such a large gap? The reason was very simple. Cultivators at different cultivation levels obtained merit points at completely different difficulty levels. For example, killing a netherworld being in the low extreme of the Mountain River tier would only earn 1 point, and the medium extreme was worth 5 points, the high extreme was 10 points, and the consummate level was 20. Theoretically, a Mountain River tier needed only kill 5 netherworld beings at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, and he could retire successfully. And once it had reached the Sun Moon tier, the low extreme would be able to provide 100 merit points. Additionally, the two-realm battlefield naturally would not allow people to take advantage of the crisis for their personal gain. If they did not earn any merit points even after a long time, they would receive a corresponding punishment. When Linghan found out about this, he made a deduction inside his head. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had joined the two-realm battlefield so early for only one purpose, avoiding the Xie clan. Hence, she had to have joined an official army. Otherwise, if she was a traveling warrior, the moment she encountered someone from the Xie clan, she would not be able to avoid the fate of being taken back by force. Then, which army would she have joined? The Purple Moon Army. It was very simple. Aside from the Purple Moon Army, all the other armies were mainly comprised of males. In the cultivation world, it was natural that there would be more male cultivators, and the male-to-female ratio was not just slightly big. Hence, on the two-realm battlefield, there were very few females, and armies would naturally comprise mainly males. Only the Purple Moon Army was a completely female army because the leader was a powerful woman. Linghan made some investigating. Men were not qualified to join the Purple Moon Army, as they only accepted females. Furthermore, to prevent harassment, the Purple Moon Army also strictly forbade men from entering into their camp. Any who broke this rule would be castrated at best and killed at worst. Hence, Linghan definitely would not rashly run into the Purple Moon Army and say that he was looking for his wife. Then, it would either be that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden would really become the Ling family's widow, or she would become a grass widow one. He decided to stand guard outside the camp of the Purple Moon Army. When they moved out, he would follow suit, find the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and then talk to her. However, even if he managed to talk to her, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden could not possibly leave with him immediately. If she left the two-realm battlefield without accumulating enough merit points, then that would make her a deserter. A deserter would not be treated well wherever they went. Thus, since he would have to stay here for quite some time, Linghan first went to Wolffang City, where he registered an identity for himself so he could earn merit points when he killed enemies in the future. It was very simple. After killing a netherworld being, he'd store the body in his spatial spirit tool, and then bring it back to Wolffang City. There would naturally be someone there to check his battle results, and record down his merit points. This method's nature also caused some people to walk off the beaten track, robbing others to snatch their spatial spirit tools, sometimes even killing them to silence them. There would be scum anywhere, Linghan thought. He came to 100 miles away from where the Purple Moon Army camped, and sat down all alone, waiting quietly for the Purple Moon Army to mobilize. The conditions here were very poor. There was a shortage of spiritual qi, and also a sinister feeling about the place. Furthermore, the regulations of the Great Tao had also become extremely weak. Linghan had tried it out. He was just barely capable of flight. It should be known that the ability to fly in the immortal realm would come with the cultivation level of the heavenly body tier. The two realms conflicted with each other, and even the regulations of the heaven and earth were affected. If even this place was like this, then what about further ahead? The contact point between Netherworld and the immortal realm was 10,000 miles away, and the further ahead one went, the bigger the effects would naturally be. Ling Han switched locations, yet discovered that the regulations here had become extraordinarily strong. Even the height he could jump for was far below the normal, what more flight? It looked like not only would the regulations of the heaven and earth here be weakened, they would also become unbalanced. In some places, the suppression had become smaller, and in some places, it had become larger. Then, if one was unaccustomed to this kind of change, and traveled here, he would be greatly affected. If he was the slightest bit careless, he might crash into something. And in battle, these effects were naturally even stronger. Brat, what is this place? Old Ginseng came out of the Black Tower for a breath of fresh air, but once he saw this place, he paled involuntarily. You, what kind of crazy place have you brought Grandpa Ginseng to? This place looked inauspicious at the first glance. Ahead of them, there were strange demonic clouds dancing, exuding an air of evil. Why had they come here for no reason? Brat, you are insane, the old Ginseng exclaimed, pointing at Ling Han. Ling Han was not angry, and merely said calmly, looks like I have to call Hunyo over, and cook a large pot of old ginseng soup. The old Ginseng immediately paled. He was really scared of that little girl. She was definitely an authentic glutton, and would eat anything. He hurriedly smiled in an obsequious way, and said, Brat, what kind of relationship do we have? If there are girls, we can chase them together. We are brothers, so there is no need for civilities between us. Ling Han only scoffed, causing the old Ginseng to step to one side sheepishly. Ling Han simply summoned out the Azura Demon Emperor as well. However, that puppet had lost one arm, causing major loss of the formation patterns that were engraved within, leading to a great drop in its battle prowess. But that was fine. Ling Han had also advanced into the Sun-Moon tier, and did not need that kind of battle prowess anymore. What he needed was the understanding the Azura Demon Emperor had regarding the Netherworld. The more he knew about the matters of the Netherworld, the higher chances of victory he would have when opposing Netherworld beings in future. Furthermore, if he wanted to break into the celestial realm, he would have to grasp both the powers of creating and destroying a world. Ling Han would have to enter into the Netherworld to comprehend the regulations of heaven and earth of the Netherworld as well. Only then did the old Ginseng know what kind of place this was. Instantly, his expression turned so ugly it looked like he was about to start bawling. However, when he heard Ling Han speak of the Purple Moon Army, this perverted old Ginseng's face immediately bloomed, and he exclaimed, Grandfather Ginseng will go and scout it. Just as he said so, he broke into a run, his speed overwhelmingly fast. Needless to say, this guy must have gone to the female army to find some information. The old Ginseng had not advanced into the Sun-Moon tier, yet his speed was extraordinarily fast. Moreover, he could also escape through the ground. Even a heavenly body tier might not be capable of capturing him. Meanwhile, Ling Han listened to the Azura Demon Emperor speak of the information regarding the Netherworld. However, the Azura Demon Emperor was only a being at the lowest level of the Netherworld, so his knowledge was lacking. Especially regarding the level of the Demon Master, he was practically a complete blank. Help! Brat, come quick and save Grandfather Ginseng. 3 days later, he heard the old Ginseng scream loudly, hollering for help through his divine sense. The transmission of sound was far from approaching the speed of his run. Ha 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 ha, come quickly into Lord Rabbit's bowl. Ling Han stood up to look, and saw that the old Ginseng was currently in a mad run. Behind him followed a rabbit that was about half the height of a human being. One in front, and the other followed closely behind, both moving at incredibly fast speeds. If it was not for the fact that Ling Han had cultivated the Eye of Truth, he would definitely be unable to see either of them. Rabbit. Ling Han was incredibly surprised. It was actually that rabbit from the lower realm. Why had it appeared here? Chapter 1240 Realm Spirit Stone. Chapter 1240 Realm Spirit Stone. The old Ginseng was running super fast, but Rabbit's strength was his speed. At the time, he was even able to compete with Hunyo. The further he chased, the nearer he came. His furry claws were just about to catch hold of the old ginseng. Mommy. The old ginseng hurriedly buried into the ground, but Rabbit was actually also capable of traveling in the ground. People said rabbits knew how to tunnel, and it was indeed true. Xiao, the old ginseng suddenly scrambled out of the ground, and when he saw Ling Han right in front of him, he couldn't help but be greatly elated, and hurriedly pounced over. A white figure swept over, and they saw Rabbit also pop out. When he saw Ling Han, he involuntarily paused, and then said, "Brat, quickly help me stop that ginseng. I can give you a bite." This rascal Rabbit was still as stingy as it had been. He actually would only give him a single bite. Ling Han laughed, and said, "It has already entered into my bowl, so why should I still give you some?" He shot out a fist, and delivered a punch at Rabbit's claws. "Brat, you are really too disloyal," Rabbit called out, his figure flashing so fast it was like a flash of lightning, wanting to avoid Ling Han's fist and continue to catch the old ginseng. Yi, this damn rabbit had actually broken through to the sun-moon tier? Ling Han was shocked. This speed of cultivation was really quite shocking. No, it was practically unimaginable. Though he was thinking that, he merely flicked a finger, and sword chi spread out, suddenly blocking Rabbit's path. This lightning sword technique was both fast and fierce. Practically no one on the same cultivation level could avoid it. They could only parry it, or be unable to oppose its blade. "Brat, help Grandpa Ginseng kill this rabbit, and I will give you something good." The old ginseng had drawn out a pink bib undergarment from who knew where, and was waving around it in his hand. Ling Han's face darkened involuntarily. This perverted ginseng was currently standing on his shoulder as he waved around the undergarment. What would be left of his image? Ha 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 ha. Rabbit was instantly laughing loudly as he rolled around on the ground. He was practically tearing up from his laughter. "Yi." The old ginseng paused, and then asked, "Brat, you know this bastard rabbit?" "Carrot, what did you call me?" Rabbit immediately jumped up, his red eyes widening. Ling Han felt a headache coming on. Why was it that those beside him were all unreliable? He held out a hand and pressed down, and said, "Rabbit, why are you here? This guy should still have been in the Great Ling Empire. After Uncle Rabbit came to the immortal realm, I went out to play around. Coincidentally, I actually barged into an ancient transfer formation, and have thus ended up here." Rabbit sighed. "However, I am very shockingly lucky, and actually picked up a divine pill. After I ate it, I carelessly gained sun-moon tier cultivation." "Fuck, what kind of luck was that?" Ling Han shook his head. He had just barely entered into the sun-moon tier after so much effort. This kind of speed of advancement was already astonishingly fast, but he could not hold a candle to Rabbit's natural luck. He just ate an alchemical pill, and reached the top in a single leap. However, if he had depended on alchemical pills to advance, his foundations would definitely be unstable, and it would also be impossible for him to cultivate the pinnacle level. If it was not for the fact that Rabbit was born with extremely fast speed, a sun-moon tier like him would not have much battle prowess. For example, it was only because the old ginseng had not broken through to the sun-moon tier that he had to escape. Otherwise, there would have been no need for him to run. If he fought with Rabbit, it was really indefinite who would be winning in the end. When the old ginseng saw this, he couldn't help but feel a burst of courage, and shouted at Rabbit, "Bastard Rabbit, you have chased me all this way, come quick and kowtow to apologize to your Grandpa Ginseng. Carrot, come quickly into Uncle Rabbit's bowl." Rabbit was naturally not going to show any weakness, either. "Stop. Stop. Stop." Ling Han stretched out his hands and pressed down. "Rabbit, where is that transfer formation?" He had not thought that there would actually be a transfer formation connecting the joint peace planet and this place. Then it would be convenient for him to return in the future. He would not need to waste another 2 years' time in the galaxy. "Brat, let me advise you to give up that idea." Rabbit shook his head, and seriously said, that ancient transfer formation is extremely complex, and requires corresponding coordinates to be able to reach a specific place. You have completely no idea where the joint peace planet is. If you start it up rashly, you will only be sent to the ends of the universe. Ling Han was stunned for a while, and then immediately said, "You damn rabbit, you must have tampered with that transfer formation, right? If that wasn't it, he just happened to be transferred from the Joint Peace planet to the Cloud Apex planet, so a return trip should be along the way as well." Rabbit's eyes immediately turned in all directions. After he had transferred over, he had no idea what was going on, so he fiddled and tweaked around with it, and ruined the transfer formation entirely. That was why he didn't want to let Ling Han know. Che, that transfer formation was too old. After it brought Uncle Rabbit over, it collapsed by itself. How could that be my fault? He waved his short stump of a tail, and pushed all the blame cleanly off himself. Ling Han sighed. It looked like he would still have to use the cloud-piercing shuttle to return. Thankfully, it was only 2 years' time, and he could also cultivate in the Black Tower, so it could not be considered too much of a waste of time. "Looks like you are doing quite well here." He did not think any further of the transfer formation. "Of course," Rabbit said proudly. "The medicinal effects of that divine pill that Uncle Rabbit ate have not been completely expended, and my cultivation level would grow considerably each day. Joining some fights here and exercising would be most suitable." And that was also because on the Cloud Apex planet, the humans and demonic beasts had joined forces because of their shared enemy. Otherwise, if this had been the Joint Peace planet, this rabbit would have long since been made into a stew. Yet the old ginseng's eyes lit up, and he waved the undergarment in front of Ling Han's eyes as he quietly said, "Brat, let's kill this bastard rabbit, all right? Just listen, this bastard rabbit said that there are still some medicinal effects active inside its body. If we eat it, it would definitely be greatly beneficial." "Carrot, what did you say?" Rabbit, who was also one with sharp ears, immediately jumped up. "Just see if I won't eat you. You want to eat your grandpa ginseng? You are still 8 million years too early." The old ginseng used Ling Han like a shield, and ran around in circles around him. Meanwhile, Rabbit was chasing after him as he circled around Ling Han, and the other was running around on his body. "Pa! Pa!" Ling Han stretched out both hands, and caught hold of both Rabbit and the old ginseng at the same time. He said, "Do you believe that I will cook the both of you, and make a pot of rabbit stew with ginseng for some nutrition?" Both Rabbit and the old ginseng kept quiet out of fear, sensing that this guy in front of them was also a glutton. Ling Han tossed both the old ginseng and Rabbit on the ground, and said, "Rabbit, you have been here for quite some years. What have you found out?" Rabbit took a look at the old ginseng, and couldn't help but salivate. Then, it said, "In the two-realm battlefield, spiritual chi is lacking, and for cultivators, it is the worst kind of place. However, also because this place is where the two realms intersect, the collision of the regulations of two realms would occasionally evolve and become solid." "Oh!" Ling Han was surprised. Regulations could not be seen nor touched, and that was why they were so difficult to comprehend. Yet they would actually evolve and become solid. That is known as the Realm Spirit Stone. If one refines it, he would be able to comprehend the regulations. Uncle Rabbit had once found one, and had indeed advanced a huge step on the grasping of the Great Tao after refining it. It is said that sometimes, even saints of Genesis tier would come to the two-realm battlefield to find Realm Spirit Stones. However, this thing is really too rare. Furthermore, the higher the cultivation level, the more Realm Spirit Stones one would need to advance another step further. Realization dawned on Ling Han. No wonder the two great imperial empires were so actively fighting against the Netherworld, or maybe it should be said no wonder why conflicts would erupt so frequently between the beings from the two realms. That was because everyone wanted to find Realm Spirit Stones here. Chapter 1241, Looters. Chapter 1241, Looters. Where are Realm Spirit Stones usually found? Ling Han asked. Naturally, where the conflict between the two realms is the most intense, Rabbit replied. Then they're probably 5,000 kilometers ahead, Ling Han said. That place was located just in front of the Netherworld's territory. The encampment of the immortal realm lay on this side, while the encampment of the Netherworld lay on that side. The closer the encampments, the more intense the conflict. After all, beings from both realms wanted to obtain realm spirit stones. Anyhow, was this war an invasion, a defensive one, or purely a war over benefits? Ling Han shook his head. This wasn't for him to think about. He had the reincarnation tree, and thus he wasn't in desperate need of realm spirit stones. Moreover, the aim of his trip was to find the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Everything else could be put aside. He continued to wait for the Purple Moon Army. As for the old ginseng and rabbit, they actually ended up with their arms around each other's shoulders after fighting for a while. It was as if they had become brothers. Ling Han could barely believe his eyes. Rabbit and the ginseng disappeared in no time after saying that they were going to search for realm spirit stones. Ling Han didn't mind what they did. He continued to study cultivation and alchemy as he waited. He had obtained a pile of ancient pill recipes not long ago, and he needed to get his head around them. Although he had already become a level 8 alchemist, he only knew a pitifully small number of pill recipes. How could he live up to his title as the Alchemy Emperor? Ling Han ordered the Azura Demon Emperor to keep watch outside as he entered the Black Tower to cultivate and study. If the Purple Moon Army started to move, the Azura Demon Emperor would cause a huge commotion nearby to notify him. Peng. After comprehending under the reincarnation tree for an unknown period of time, he suddenly felt a large tremor ripple through the earth nearby. He hurriedly exited the Black Tower, only to find the Azura Demon Emperor engaged in an intense battle with a group of people. There were only 3 Sun Moon tier elites among this group, with the other people all being at the Mountain River tier. However, the puppet that the Azura Demon Emperor was in was already very damaged. He was only at the Mountain River tier, so his divine sense still wasn't powerful enough. However, a few of his opponents just happened to specialize in divine sense attacks. This forced him onto his back foot. If the puppet he was in hadn't been at the Sun Moon tier, the Azura Demon Emperor probably would have died under the relentless attacks already. Ling Han couldn't help but feel irritated. He leaped over and shouted, "Stop! Master!" The Azura Demon Emperor hurriedly dashed toward Ling Han as if he had seen his savior. He was on the verge of being beaten to death, and now that Ling Han had descended like a deity, he was so moved that he was on the verge of tears. However, the group of people didn't stop. Instead, they chuckled coldly, with one person saying, "Damn, you actually dare to collude with wicked beings from the netherworld. How courageous." These people actually discovered the Azura Demon Emperor's true identity. Ling Han casually swung his fist and forced the group of people back, saying, "This is my servant. What does he have to do with the netherworld?" The Azura Demon Emperor hid behind Ling Han, and he transmitted his voice using his divine sense, saying, "Master, in order to surveil the Purple Moon Army, I released my body outside the puppet. However, I was coincidentally seen by these people, and they started to attack me." He was a mist-like being, and even though he couldn't fly in the immortal realm, he could still elongate his body and survey the surroundings from a high vantage point. Unexpectedly, this had led to unwanted trouble. Ling Han nodded in understanding. This wasn't the Azura Demon Emperor's fault. In fact, he had only done this to better carry out his orders. "Sir, if you don't move, we'll have to treat you as a traitor of the immortal realm and kill you along with that wicked being," the people warned. "No need to speak nonsense with him. Perhaps he's a fat sheep. So, it'll be better if we just kill him." Read more chapter on Novelful. Maybe he's the descendant of some large clan. If that's the case, there'll be heaps of treasures on him. Greed appeared on their faces. Ling Han suddenly came to a realization, and he said, "You people are looters, right? You specialize in looting lone travelers." "Here." The group of people chuckled coldly, and said, "Since you've guessed our identity, go die." Although Ling Han was also at the Sun Moon tier, he was only at the middle stage of the low extreme. Moreover, he was all by himself. Meanwhile, the group of looters had 3 Sun Moon tier elites. After spending numerous years here, they had also accumulated quite some wealth, and used their merit points to obtain quite some treasures. If they unleashed these treasures, they could even kill elites at the peak stage of the medium extreme of the Sun Moon tier. This was one of the reasons they dared to act so wantonly. Killing intent flashed across Ling Han's eyes. Since they planned to kill him, he didn't need to hold back, either. He would kill them all. Together. The group of people naturally wouldn't battle him one-on-one. A dozen or so people instantly charged toward Ling Han and the Azura Demon Emperor. Sabers flashed and swords slashed. Killing intent permeated through the air. Ling Han's expression became dark, and he said, "You people are ambushing your allies instead of fighting against the Netherworld on the front lines. How admirable." He clicked his finger. Pa. The head of a looter instantly exploded, and his divine sense was also obliterated along with it. He was as dead as could be. Damn it. The ruffians were infuriated. However, the person who had been killed was only at the mountain river tier, so they didn't become afraid. They continued to attack Ling Han. Ling Han threw a punch. Pa. The head of another person instantly exploded. His divine sense was also obliterated. If one wanted to kill an immortal for good, they had to obliterate their divine sense. Otherwise, an immortal could use their divine sense to possess another person. If they possessed a good host, perhaps they would become even stronger than before. Pa. The heads of the looters continued to explode, causing clouds of blood to soar into the air. There were only a dozen or so looters, so how could they stand up to Ling Han's vicious massacre? In the flash of an eye, only the 3 Sun Moon tier elites remained. However, these 3 elites were all trembling in terror. The youth opposite them was like a god of death, killing one of them with each punch. Moreover, he had killed them with absolute ease. His overwhelming power absolutely petrified them. He was far too powerful. Damn it, one of the looters roared. Second brother, third brother, this is no time to hold back. Hurry up and unleash your divine seals. Otherwise, we're all going to die here today. A crimson glow instantly erupted from his body. Boundless raging flames surged out, and his aura instantly increased manifold. Twisted smiles appeared on the faces of the other 2, and they both retrieved divine seals before slapping them on their bodies. They had all practiced the same cultivation technique, and thus they were all using the same divine seal at this moment, soaring crimson flames. Their power instantly soared to the peak stage of the medium extreme of the Sun Moon tier. In fact, it was already bordering on the early stage of the high extreme. Die! The 3 people roared as they lunged toward Ling Han. Ling Han was astonished. Such power-raising divine seals were extremely valuable, yet these 3 looters each possessed 1 such divine seal. They had probably used their merit points to redeem them. No wonder so many people stayed here even after completing their service. Ignoring the startling death rate, the 2-realm battlefield was truly a land of treasures. As long as one earned enough merit points, they could obtain any treasure they wanted. However, the divine seals were truly wasted on these 3 people. Ling Han unleashed a wisp of heaven's might. Pa. The 3 people instantly fell to their knees, their bodies becoming so feeble that they couldn't even unleash an inkling of their power. The divine seals had merely elevated their power. However, their divine sense hadn't been strengthened at all. That being the case, how could they withstand Ling Han's kingly might, a might that used heavenly tribulation as its foundation? Chapter 1242, Treasure Map. Chapter 1242, Treasure Map. Don't kill me. The 3 looters were so terrified that tears started to stream down their faces. With the threat of death looming over them, their cowardly instincts instantly kicked in. They were only begging for their own lives, and they clearly didn't give a rat's ass about their companions. Are your lives worth anything? Ling Han said indifferently. Master, let little Azura deal with them. There was a ball of fire in the Azura Demon Emperor's chest. He had almost been killed by them just then, so he naturally wanted to kill them with his own hands now. Killing intent surged from his body. In any case, he was a demon from the Netherworld, so killing people didn't make him feel guilty or traumatized at all. No. Don't kill me, the 3 looters shouted in panic. Spare me. I have an ancient map that reveals the location of an ancient treasure, one of the looters said. What? The other 2 looters exclaimed in astonishment. Didn't you tell us that the treasure map was already lost? So, It turns out that you pocketed it for yourself." There was fury on their faces as they chided and condemned each other. They were gripped with internal conflict. The Azura Demon Emperor was especially observant, and he knew that Ling Han's interest had been piqued. He immediately turned to the looters and shouted, "What treasure map? Hurry up and hand it over." "Will you spare me if I hand it over?" the owner of the treasure map asked cautiously. "Pa." The Azura Demon Emperor instantly smashed the head of another looter in pieces, and threatened, "Do you have the right to negotiate with me?" The person's face instantly turned green with fright, and he hurriedly exclaimed, "Don't kill me. I'll take you over to retrieve the treasure map straight away." "It's not on you?" the Azura Demon Emperor asked. The person frantically shook his head, and replied, "No." Although the looters were companions, none of them trusted each other. So, how could he keep the treasure map in his personal spatial spirit tool? They could loot others, and others could naturally loot them as well. Thus, they definitely wouldn't keep valuable items on themselves. Otherwise, how could they negotiate with others? If they kept everything on themselves, they would be done for once their spatial spirit tool was taken. The Azura Demon Emperor glanced at Ling Han, and saw that he didn't mind. He instantly became more daring, and he lashed out at the other looter. "Pa." The other looter's head was also smashed into pieces. Blood and gore splattered all over the remaining looter's face, causing him to almost wet his pants in terror. Although they were vicious when killing others, their knees would immediately go weak when they ended up on the receiving end. The Azura Demon Emperor guarded the looter, and Ling Han walked behind them. The looter led them to a small valley, where he removed a boulder to reveal a ring that was stuck in a gap underneath it. If the looter hadn't retrieved it for them, it would have been almost impossible for Ling Han and the Azura Demon Emperor to find. The Azura Demon Emperor snatched the ring, and respectfully handed it to Ling Han. There was an obsequious look on his face. Ling Han accepted the ring, and scanned it with his divine sense. He saw that it was quite full, with true origin stones, a few cultivation techniques, and a few pieces of godly metal. Finally, there was a map. He took the map out, and asked, "Where's this treasure map from?" "I don't know. I only found it after robbing a group of people," the looter said. "Young master, can I leave now?" "Leave your mom." The Azura Demon Emperor instantly launched a fist at the looter. "Pa." The last looter was also killed. Ling Han didn't feel a shred of sympathy. These people specially targeted the cultivators here, and their actions were truly abhorrent and reprehensible. They should have been fighting against external enemies, yet they lingered behind the front lines and targeted their allies. Everything they did was deserving of contempt. "This place. Where is it?" Ling Han looked at the red circle in the center region of the map. This red circle probably marked the location of the treasure. However, the entire terrain on the map seemed extremely unfamiliar. "Hang on, I have another treasure map on me. I obtained it in the 12-Heaven Mystery Realm." Ling Han recalled that the 12-Heaven Mystery Realm had been constructed by the 12 generals under the Heavenly River King. After receiving the inheritance of a palace, one would receive a set of coordinates that corresponded to some place in the immortal realm. The Heavenly River King's supreme inheritances were hidden at these locations. Ling Han had stayed put on the Joint Peace Planet before, so he naturally hadn't been able to search for these coordinates. Now that he had come to the Cloud Apex planet, he finally had the opportunity to search for it. Anyhow, who on earth is the Heavenly River King? The secret techniques that I obtained in that mystery realm are all supreme techniques, be it the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art or the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow. They're all first-rate secret techniques, at least for now. Judging by this fact, the Heavenly River King's inheritance is at least at the Heavenly Body tier. Oh, that's right. I also obtained an egg in that mystery realm. With a thought, an egg immediately appeared before Ling Han. He had obtained it in the 12-Heaven Mystery Realm. Afterward, he had left it in the Black Tower. However, it hadn't grown or changed a single bit, so he had almost forgotten about its existence. I can feel vitality coming from it, so it can still be hatched. However, how much longer is it going to take? This is the descendant of an azure flame vulture, so theoretically speaking, it shouldn't take so long to hatch. Could it be because I left it in the Black Tower? After all, the Black Tower lacks the regulations of heaven and earth, so it can't be regarded as a legitimate world even though it can hold living beings. Moreover, I left it under the reincarnation tree, and it seems like this did something mysterious to the egg. Will the hatched azure flame vulture still be an azure flame vulture? Should I just eat it instead? This thought flashed past Ling Han's mind. In the end, however, he decided to keep the egg. Perhaps it would hatch if he took it out and let it enjoy the sun more often. He left the egg resting there, and he sat on a boulder himself. Elites at the Sun-Moon tier are probably strong enough to shatter the barriers to small worlds. However, it'll still be extremely difficult for them to enter these small worlds due to the regulations of heaven and earth. They'll have to either suppress or sever their cultivation. Of course, the people from the celestial realm don't need to do this. After reaching a certain tier, one can ignore the regulations of the small worlds. Could it be that the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire is from the celestial realm? The Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire had told him to obtain true dragon's horns and heavenly phoenix's feathers, and both were from saint-level beasts. Moreover, judging by his tone, it seemed as if he viewed these beings with disdain. This would all make sense if he were a great elite from the celestial realm. What kind of place is the lower realm? Why did it attract so many freaks? Ling Han felt a slight headache. The Azura Demon Emperor had told him that the lower realm had already ascended to the immortal realm once. However, for some reason, it had fallen down to become a small world again. It was because of this that Ling Han had been able to open the sky for a second time. Perhaps I'll only have the right to figure this out when I enter the celestial realm. Right now, there's one thing that I can definitely confirm. Even Genesis tier saints can't hack a piece of land from the immortal realm and transform it into a small world. Only those who have grasped both the power of construction and power of destruction can do this. I obtained the Black Tower, and it seems like I inherited a great danger along with it. Ling Han shook his head and cleared his mind. He planned to put the egg away and return to his original spot, where he would continue to observe the Purple Moon Army. Shua. Right at this moment, a sword light suddenly slashed at him. It possessed a devastating might, and it was as if the sky were about to collapse. Comment. Die, despicable thief. Chapter 1243, Disciple of the Heaven's Sword Palace. Chapter 1243, Disciple of the Heaven's Sword Palace. This slash was incredibly quick. In fact, it was so quick that it arrived in front of Ling Han before the sound of its swing even traveled over. Ling Han replied with his fist. Peng. His fist collided with the sword light, instantly causing it to shatter into pieces. A human figure flew back in retreat. However, that person was fairly skilled, and they dispelled most of the force from Ling Han's punch by doing a backflip through the air. They landed on the ground steadily. It was a female, and she looked to be around 20 years old. She was quite beautiful, yet there was an air of arrogance on her face. If she weren't the darling daughter of some powerful family, then she was probably the beloved young miss of some clan. She had clearly been spoiled. Behind her, another 7 people were briskly walking over. They were all men, and only one of them was a white-haired elder. The other 6 were all spirited young men. Junior sister. The 6 young men immediately ran over and surrounded the young beauty. Their voices were filled with care and concern. Junior sister, are you okay? That person didn't hurt you, did he? Despicable. He actually dares to attack junior sister. These young men glared at Ling Han as they expressed their concern for the young beauty. It was as if they wanted to kill him with their glare. Meanwhile, they completely ignored the fact that it was the young woman who had attacked him first. Ling Han couldn't help but find this funny. This woman had attacked him out of the blue, and he had simply retaliated in self-defense. Why were they glaring at him as if he had done something abhorrent? He shook his head and said, "Don't you guys think you owe me an explanation and apology?" Explanation? Apology? The young men chuckled coldly. This person had injured their junior sister, yet he actually wanted them to offer an explanation and apologize. Had his brain been kicked in by a donkey? Humph. You're a mere looter who deserves to be killed. Yet, you actually want us to offer an explanation and apologize. Keep dreaming, one of the young men shouted. Ling Han's anger subsided a little when he heard this. Indeed, one didn't need to hold back when attacking a looter. Otherwise, they would be risking their own life. However, which part of him looked like a looter? You people think I'm a looter? Ling Han shook his head and said, your observation skills are truly trash. It's time to get your eyes checked. Despicable thief, the map in your hands belonged to one of our senior brothers. If you aren't a looter, why is the map in your hands? The young woman asked angrily. She had already caught her breath. I'm not sure if you're joking. Ling Han said with a mocking laugh. Couldn't I have killed another looter and snatched it from them? Heh, young man, if that's the case, please return the map to us, the elder said. His voice was low, and it possessed a powerful might. He was an elite at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so he naturally wasn't afraid of Ling Han. Ling Han laughed in anger, and said, let's forget about whom this map belongs to first. Since I obtained this map, shouldn't you people be more polite if you want it back? I'm not your slave, yet you people are acting all high and mighty. What, do I owe you people something? Bullsh*T, a young man chided. That map was originally ours, so isn't it natural that you return it to us? Ling Han sneered, and said, originally yours. This map has existed for tens of millions of years, and it's an item from the ancient past. Its original owner has died years ago. So, how is it originally yours? At most, it's something that you people snatched from someplace else. There's no need to act so righteously. Young man, are you asking for trouble? The elder said with a humph. Seventh uncle, there's no need to speak nonsense with him. Seize him, the young woman shouted. Out of everyone present, only she dared to speak to the elder like this. Who told her to be so spoiled and pampered? The elder pondered for a moment, and then said, fine. Try not to hurt him. The 7 young men all chuckled coldly. They only needed to try not to hurt him. In other words, hurting him would be fine. The strength of these young men was far above the strength of the looters from before. Apart from the elder being at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, the 7 young men were also at the Sun-Moon tier. Their cultivation levels ranged from the early stage of the low extreme to the peak stage of the low extreme. However, none of them were at the medium extreme. This made sense. If they weren't powerful enough, how would they dare to look for that group of looters? Judging by their attitude, the treasure map was genuinely a valuable item. With a thought, Ling Han placed both the treasure map and the egg back into the Black Tower. He then turned to them, and coldly said, although you people aren't looters, you're not much better than them. I'll give you people one final warning. Apologize to me. Otherwise, pray for the blessings of heaven. Laughable. It's already come to this, yet you still dare to threaten us. Kill him and be done with it. It's not like his spatial spirit tool will run away. That's right, kill him. We're disciples of the Heaven's Sword Palace. The 7 young men all voiced their opinions. Heaven's Sword Palace? Ling Han's killing intent instantly soared. He hadn't gone looking for the 5 sects yet they had coincidentally crossed paths here. As expected of the 5 sects, they've always been this arrogant and domineering. Aren't you afraid that I have a powerful background? One that can annihilate the Heaven's Sword Palace with a flip of their hands, he asked calmly. Haha. People with powerful backgrounds don't go running around alone. They definitely have people guarding them in secret, a young man scoffed. Did this person think they were fools? They knew very well whom they could offend and whom they couldn't. Let me tell you something else, another young man said. Those from powerful clans or powerful sects all have clear symbols on their clothing. He lifted his sleeve, revealing a small sword that was sewn into it. It was very small, and one wouldn't notice it if they weren't paying attention. So that's how it is. Ling Han nodded, and said, thanks for the information. As your reward, I'll send you all on your way. He planned to obliterate the 5 sects, but he didn't plan to kill every single member of the 5 sects. He believed that no matter how despicable a sect, there were always members who were just and noble. Thus, He only intended to disperse the 5 sects and kill all the higher-up. She would let everyone else leave. However, these people in front of him, they stirred his killing intent. How bold and shameless, the 7 young men sneered. Although they were young, they had all cultivated for at least 100,000 years. Moreover, their hands were stained with blood. So, how could they possibly be lenient toward him? The treasure map is of utmost importance and secrecy. We can't let him live. Die. The 7 young men ruthlessly charged toward him. Ling Han humphed coldly. He then snapped his fingers, sending a torrent of ferocious sword chi toward his opponents. He had held back before not because of soft-heartedness, but because he didn't have a habit of killing for no reason. However, these people were seeking death now, so he naturally didn't mind sending them into the afterlife. *T. The elder's expression changed drastically when he saw Ling Han unleash his attack. This was far too terrifying. He had only snapped his fingers, yet the battle prowess that he unleashed was already nearing his level. One had to realize that Ling Han was already at the middle stage of the low extreme. Moreover, he possessed power that could surpass 6 stars. Thus, his true power was already at the peak stage of the medium extreme. Just how terrifying was this? Pu. The torrent of sword chi instantly crushed the heads of the 7 young men. None of them had a complete corpse. Although the elder had dashed over, he was a step too late. He could only watch on as his 7 juniors were massacred before him. These were prodigies that the sect had raised for over 100,000 years. The elder's heart bled. He glowered at Ling Han, and spat, "Brat, I'm going to slice your flesh off piece by piece and feed it to dogs." Chapter 1244, Invincible Sword Might. Chapter 1244, Invincible Sword Might. For Sun Moon tier forces like the Heaven's Sword sect, their strongest beings would only be at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier. Thus, those who were at the low extreme of the Sun Moon tier were also integral members of the sect. In fact, they could even be regarded as the pillars of the sect. Now, however, they had been killed as if they were mere ants. Countless millennia's worth of training and resources had disappeared in a flash. The elder had a reason to be furious. He opened his hands, and 3 suns and 2 moons materialized behind him, radiating with a boundless murderous aura. He was at the middle stage of the high extreme. Peng! Ling Han replied with a fist, yet he was instantly sent flying. There was a difference of 2 stars between them, and it was truly too great to overcome. A cloud of blood erupted from his body. Luckily, his godly bones were strong enough, and wouldn't be broken so easily. "Good one, brat." There was a look of immense shock on the elder's face as he stared at Ling Han. He was 2 minor levels above Ling Han. Theoretically speaking, this was a difference of 8 stars. Ling Han should have definitely been insta-killed by him. However, although Ling Han was no match for him in terms of power, he was merely injured, and not killed. In fact, his injuries weren't even severe. How could he accept this? "No matter how strong you are, you still won't escape death today," the elder said coldly. He had an overwhelming advantage over Ling Han. Thus, even if he couldn't insta-kill him, he could still kill him if he landed a few more blows on him. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "I don't see why not." He retrieved an explosive thunder pill and tossed it into his mouth. Pa, pa, pa. Lightning instantly arced around his body, and his power increased explosively. Explosive thunder pill. This was a pill that could raise one's battle prowess by 2 stars. Ling Han shook his arms and legs. He felt like his body was full of energy. The explosive thunder pill was a level 6 divine pill. Theoretically speaking, it could raise the battle prowess of an elite at the medium extreme of the Sun Moon tier by 2 stars. However, the higher one's cultivation level, the lower the increase in battle prowess. Right now, Ling Han's battle prowess had already soared to the peak stage of the medium extreme. In other words, the explosive thunder pill hadn't been able to raise his battle prowess by 2 stars. Instead, it had only been able to raise it by 1 star and a bit. However, this was still very terrifying. His power had increased tenfold. "Come again." He charged toward the elder from the Heaven's Sword Palace. Peng! 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 The two of them continued to exchange blows. In terms of power, Ling Han was still inferior to the elder. After all, there was still a difference of 1 star. The elder regained his confidence after a while, and said, "Haha, young man, the earlier you die, the earlier you'll be able to enter the afterlife. Hurry up and end your futile resistance. Let this old man send you on your way. That way, you'll at least die a less painful death." The pill didn't seem to help his opponent too much. Don't get excited too early. Ling Han activated the power of heavenly tribulation, and a wisp of heavens might instantly surged from his body. What? The color instantly drained from the elder's face. This overwhelming might caused even his heart to constrict. How could someone unleash such a devastating might? This was far too terrifying. It was as if he were standing before heaven and earth. A sense of boundless fear and awe rose from the bottom of his heart. Before such an immense aura, his power instantly plunged tenfold. Their power was on the same level now. How is this possible? The elder yelped in astonishment. Ling Han smiled faintly. Apart from him, who else could leisurely study and analyze heavenly tribulation? Who else could comprehend the heavenly Tao? When others endured their heavenly tribulation, they all had to unleash their full power. Meanwhile, Ling Han's physique was a level above his cultivation. Thus, he could remain calm and relaxed even amid his heavenly tribulation. Old geezer, accept your death. Although the elder was astonished, he didn't become panicked. His opponent did indeed possess all kinds of techniques. However, their power was still at the same level at this moment. So, what was there to be afraid of? You're still 10 million years too young to kill me, the elder said with a humph. He unsheathed a sword and slashed at Ling Han. He was an elder of the Heaven's Sword Palace, so he was naturally an elite in the sword Tao. Moreover, the sword in his hand was a level 7 god tool. He had nurtured this sword for countless years, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was one with the sword. Their combined might was greater than the sum of their individual might. As his sword swung forward, nothing about him seemed old. Instead, he was like a panther leaping through the air. A profound sword intent radiated from his body, and it drew on the great might of heaven and earth as it slashed toward Ling Han. Is that so? Ling Han said with a cold smile. He unsheathed his divine demon sword. Wang. His sword dazzled brilliantly as it unleashed a formidable might. One had to realize that the divine demon sword had also experienced heavenly tribulation several times. Moreover, it was nurtured by Ling Han's martial intent day and night, causing it to also be engraved with heaven's might. Although it was only a level 5 god tool, its might far exceeded this level. It was like Ling Han, its battle prowess couldn't be determined by its level. Once the divine demon sword appeared, the sword in the elder's hand instantly lost its luster. After all, the divine demon sword was forged from devouring metal, a supreme material that could evolve to divine metal in the future. The elder truly started to panic at this moment. His opponent's sword was far too vicious. In fact, it caused a sense of terror to grip at his heart. Ling Han unleashed his lightning sword technique at the elder. The elder hurriedly parried, yet Ling Han's sword technique was both quick and powerful. This exhausted him in no time, and he felt as if he would be killed if he made any mistake. His body was drenched in cold sweat. It was as if he were treading the fine line between life and death. One mistake, and his life would come to an end. A boundless chill gripped at his body. Right now, all he wanted was to flee from this godforsaken place. He wanted to return to the sect, where he could ask a great elite to kill this young man. However, the longer they battled, the bolder Ling Han became. The might of the divine demon sword had given him a pleasant surprise. As expected of something that can evolve to divine metal in the future. Not only is it malleable, but it's also immensely powerful. It was as if the divine demon sword had originally been at or even above the Genesis tier. He simply needed to unlock its potential with his power. By doing so, he would be able to unleash a devastating might. His divine sword possessed the potential to soar through the heavens. Who could withstand its power? Pu, pu, pu. Blood sprayed through the air, and the elder was drenched in blood as waves upon waves of sword chi slashed toward him. This was the true might of the divine demon sword. The sword chi that it unleashed would transform in tens of thousands of sword projections, each of which was deadly. The elder was cornered, and he couldn't help but shout, "Who on earth are you? Why are you targeting the Heaven's Sword Palace?" Ling Han almost burst into laughter. "Has your head been trampled by a donkey? It was clearly you people who targeted me first. Why are you twisting the facts?" He shook his head, and said, "Since you've asked, I really do have great animosity toward the Heaven's Sword Palace. One day, I'll erase this sect from the face of the immortal realm." The elder was stunned. His opponent really did have animosity toward the Heaven's Sword Palace. "I'll tell you before you die. I'm from the lower realm," Ling Han said coldly. His attacks became even quicker as he spoke, and he sent tens of thousands of sword projections toward the elder. Each sword projection was equivalent to the full power strike of Ling Han, so how could the elder withstand them? "Why were you Ling Han? Aya!" A person suddenly flashed into the elder's mind. However, he was instantly sent flying by the sword projections, with both of his arms being sliced off. Columns of blood spurted into the air. However, it was as if he hadn't felt this, and he simply stared at Ling Han in shock. There was an incredulous look in his eyes. Everyone in the 5 sects knew of Ling Han. He had opened the sky and ascended to the immortal realm, destroying the 5 sects' operation of countless years in the process. However, only a few years had passed, so how had this person advanced from the shattering void tier to the sun-moon tier? Moreover, his battle prowess was far too astounding. He was clearly at the middle stage of the low extreme, yet even the elder wasn't his opponent. Such a formidable enemy was actually lurking right under the 5 sects' nose. Chapter 1245 – Lovers finally reunite. Chapter 1245 – Lovers finally reunite. "Old geezer, are you prepared to die now?" Ling Han asked with a smile. The elder from the Heaven's Sword Palace simply glared at Ling Han. Origin power surged from his severed shoulders, transforming into 2 arms. Powerful immortals wouldn't lose their battle prowess even if all 4 of their limbs were severed. However, the elder had already lost his courage to battle at this moment. He was going to return to the Heaven's Sword Palace immediately. He would report Ling Han's appearance to the higher-ups. This brat was far too terrifying. He was like a freak. If they left him alone for a few more years, wouldn't he reach the consummate level of the sun-moon tier? Or even the heavenly body tier? At that time, it would be useless even if the 5 sects formed an alliance. Who would be able to oppose him? Right now, however, there were still numerous elites in the 5 sects. The strongest individuals more so possessed battle prowess that could surpass 4 stars. Any one of them would be able to kill this brat. However, his life was extremely precious, so he definitely couldn't die here. This was what the elder told himself. He definitely wasn't a coward who would do anything to live. He was simply staying alive so he could contribute more to the sect. However, he hadn't been able to oppose Ling Han even at his peak. Now that both his arms had been severed, how could he still escape? Although he was an elite of the Heaven's Sword Palace, the relatively low standing of this sect meant that he had no trump cards on him. He had spent his entire fortune on the level 7 god tool. Unfortunately, even this god tool hadn't been able to save him. The elder fought as if his life depended on either was going to flee from this place. As long as he made it to Wolf Fang City, Ling Han definitely wouldn't dare to target him anymore. Wolf Fang City prohibited cultivators of the immortal realm from killing each other, regardless of what animosity existed between them. Read more chapter at VIP Novel. They had to focus their energy on external enemies. Ling Han chuckled coldly. "You still want to escape?" He lashed out with his sword, and tens of thousands of sword projections burst from the divine demon sword. This wasn't the mysterious 3000, but rather the inherent might of the divine demon sword. If it weren't this powerful, how could it live up to its future identity as divine metal? Show. The ferocity of the sword projections was earth-shattering. Meanwhile, the Elder's level 7 god tool parried this attack by itself, buying time for the Elder to escape. This was the difference between god tools and ordinary weapons. God tools either possessed a tool spirit or possessed martial intent. In both cases, it was equivalent to the god tool possessing a consciousness of its own. Ling Han released his divine demon sword, and let it battle the Elder's level 7 god tool on its own. With his hands now free, he retrieved his annihilating dragon star arrow. Shio! The arrow was as quick as lightning as it whizzed toward the Elder. Pu! The Elder's back instantly became a patch of mangled flesh. He wailed in agony as he collapsed to the ground. This arrow had wounded him quite severely. At the same time, the divine demon sword also unleashed tens of thousands of sword projections and suppressed the Elder's level 7 god tool. This was truly hard to fathom. A level 5 god tool had actually suppressed a level 7 god tool. This defied all the laws of cultivation. However, who let the material of the divine demon sword be so freakish? Ling Han dashed forward, using his finger like a sword as he unleashed his lightning sword technique. Killing intent oozed from his body. His physique was on par with level 6 god metal, and thus the attacks from his fingersword couldn't be underestimated. Such an attack wouldn't be weaker than an attack from a level 6 god tool. The Elder still wanted to resist, yet his heart was pierced by Ling Han's sword chi. His body was more so slashed into two. However, immortals wouldn't die so easily, and his divine sense dashed out from his body, attempting to flee into the distance. Theoretically speaking, one's divine sense would be like a fish out of the water. Once it left the body, it would become exhausted and eventually die. However, the more powerful one was, the slower the rate of their divine sense's exhaustion. Elites at the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier could survive in this state for several months. This would be enough time for one to find a fresh corpse a living Pasonto possess. Humph! Ling Han lightly snapped his fingers, unleashing a burst sword chi that caught up to the Elder. Pa! The Elder's divine sense was instantly obliterated. He had died once and for all. The Elder's divine sword instantly rang in sorrow. It was just about to flee, yet it was struck several hundred times by Ling Han's divine demon sword. The martial intent within the divine sword was ruthlessly erased, causing it to transform back into an ordinary sword. Without martial intent, god tools wouldn't be god tools anymore. They would simply be sharp weapons. Ling Han put the divine sword away. He could let the divine demon sword swallow the weapon later, he naturally wouldn't waste it. I never thought I'd come across the 5 sects in such a way. Anyhow, they actually sent people to look for this map. Judging by their actions, this map is definitely extraordinary. Ling Han retrieved the treasure map again. However, he knew pitifully little about the Cloud Apex planet, so he couldn't figure out the location marked on the map for the life of him. I guess even the 5 sects couldn't make head nor tail of this map. Otherwise, they wouldn't have run around randomly. They would have definitely gone to retrieve the treasures. I'll see how things go. If I'm lucky enough to come across the illustrated area, it won't hurt to look for the marked location and retrieve the treasures. Otherwise, there's no need for me to waste my time. Ling Han returned to his original spot, and continued to wait for the Purple Moon Army's movements. Meanwhile, he retrieved the egg and placed it beside himself so that it could enjoy more time in the sun. Perhaps this could speed up its growth. Several days passed, and Rabbit and the old ginseng finally returned. They both appeared especially disheveled. As it turned out, they had come across elites from the netherworld. If it hadn't been for their ability to tunnel underground, they would have definitely been made into rabbit meat and old ginseng soup. Rabbit tugged at Little Han, and said, "Little Han, hurry up and come with Uncle Rabbit. We've got to take revenge." "Yeah, that's right. Grandpa Ginseng has never suffered so badly before. We can't let it slide like this. That one-eyed dragon almost chopped my third leg off. I've got to use a 20-year-old doo-doo to suppress my fright." As he said this, the old ginseng retrieved a pink doo-doo and took a huge sniff. His expression instantly became carefree and relaxed. "Pa." Ling Han immediately kicked him aside. How could a spirit of the 5 elements be so sleazy? Compared to him, Rock Spirit was completely like a saint. I don't have time. Ling Han rejected their request, and said, but since you two have so much time on your hands, hurry up and observe the Purple Moon Army for me. I need to know when they're setting off. As expected of someone I have high hopes for. The old ginseng ran back over, and his expression was as if he were looking at a fellow sleaze. However, you're much greedier than Grandpa Ginseng. You actually want to target an entire army. Even Grandpa Ginseng has to admire your courage. Ling Han chuckled as he launched another kick. There was a wretched wail as the old ginseng flew toward the horizon. Brat, have you had enough yet? This voice became more and more distant. In the end, the old ginseng became a little star in the sky. Peace and quiet finally returned. Huh! Ling Han suddenly stood up. 50 kilometers away, a brigade of soldiers was walking out from the encampment of the Purple Moon Army. With his eyesight, he could naturally see 100 kilometers away. Anyhow, he was observing from this far away because the Purple Moon Army had an elite at the Eternal River tier keeping guard. The perceptive ability of such an elite would definitely be terrifying. Thus, he didn't dare to venture too close. Otherwise, he'd have no one to complain to if he were mistaken for an enemy scout and killed. Although killing fellow cultivators was forbidden, who would dare to question the actions of an Eternal River tier elite? Might was right. This had been proved time and time again. In any case, there was finally movement from the Purple Moon Army, though this was only a small brigade. Ling Han activated his Eye of Truth. This way, he would be able to see the appearance of everyone more clearly. This brigade was only 100 strong, and Ling Han started his observation from the head of the brigade. When his gaze moved 1/3 of the way down, his eyes suddenly locked onto a person. There was a look of emotion on his face. It was the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Chapter 1246, Meeting. Chapter 1246, Meeting. 10,000 years had passed, and he was finally able to see his lover again. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was a prodigy, and she had advanced to the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier in just 10,000 years. The most beneficial aspect of this was that her countenance hadn't aged a single bit. She was still just as beautiful as before. She had been the #1 beauty in the lower realm, and even after arriving in the immortal realm, she was still a breathtaking beauty. Otherwise, why would Prince Xie have fallen in love with her at first sight? However, beauties like her weren't one of a kind anymore. If this weren't the case, Xie Donglai would have had no chance with her. Numerous other higher-ups would have taken her as their concubine. Why did men cultivate to become stronger? Wasn't it for power and beautiful women? Anyhow, after being stared at for so long, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden surprisingly noticed the unwelcome attention. She looked in Ling Han's direction. What's wrong? A woman next to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked. She was an ordinary-looking woman, and she had noticed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's slight change in expression. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden smiled faintly before shaking her head, and saying, "It's nothing." However, a feeling of apprehension gripped at her heart. Had the Xie clan found her already? Ling Han watched as the brigade left the Purple Moon Army's encampment. He then hurriedly followed after them. The old ginseng caught up to Ling Han, and shouted, "Brat, don't forget Grandpa Ginseng when you're flirting with women." Beautiful women and what not were his favorite. Rabbit snickered, and said, "Good for nothing." However, he also followed after them. This was because Ling Han was heading toward the depths of the two-realm passageway. He was still hoping that Ling Han would exact revenge for them. The group of 3 people tailed the brigade of soldiers. However, the regulations of heaven and earth in this place were especially strange, and this made it extremely hard to advance quickly. After walking for a day, they had only managed to advance 500 or so kilometers. Such a slow pace would be unfathomable in the outside world. Night fell, and the brigade stopped to set up camp. They needed to rest for the night so that they could stay in peak condition. Ling Han and the others stopped someplace far away from the brigade. They would also rest for the night. However, the old ginseng was unwilling to behave, and he insisted on sneaking into the female's camp during the night. In the end, he was viciously beaten by Ling Han. What a joke, his wife was in that camp, so how could he tolerate the old ginseng sneaking over to peep? Brat, you're so disloyal. Can you really pick up so many women by yourself? You're having the lion's share, so can't you at least leave some scraps for Grandpa Ginseng? 1,000 curses upon you. The old ginseng was both angry and exasperated. If you utter any more nonsense, I'll cook you into soup. Ling Han threatened. Do it. Do it. Rabbit started to drool, and it said, Uncle Rabbit will prepare some firewood. He tossed a pile of firewood onto the ground. This wasn't any ordinary firewood, but firewood that was made from rosewood. Fire lit on such kind of wood was extremely good for alchemy and tool refinement. Using such firewood to cook was incredibly extravagant. The old ginseng was shocked. He pointed at Rabbit and said, Holy fuck, you *T2Y Rabbit, you were still calling me brother during the day. So, it turns out that you had your eyes on my flesh. Carrot, if you don't go to hell, who's going to go to hell? Sacrifice yourself for the good of the world. Uncle Rabbit will remember you forever. Rabbit pretended to be serious. It rubbed its chin and said, Little Han, should we wash this old ginseng first? Wash your mom. The old ginseng hurriedly fled into the distance. He was afraid that they would become serious and really chop him into pieces. Ling Han wasn't in the mood to deal with these two living treasures. He started to mull over how he would strike a conversation with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The next day, the brigade of soldiers broke camp and advanced another 500 or so kilometers. They repeated this process, and after 4 days, they arrived in the depths of the two-realm battlefield. The surroundings became increasingly harsh. Not only was there a lack of spiritual chi, but the clash between regulations also became increasingly evident. The regulations of the immortal realm were stronger in some places, while the regulations of the netherworld were stronger in other places. This led to a strange phenomenon. Two beings who were equally as powerful, one from the immortal realm and one from the netherworld, the being from the immortal realm would be stronger in some places, while the being from the netherworld would be stronger in other places. Thus, it was extremely important to pick a suitable location if one wanted to battle in this place. Otherwise, those who should win might end up losing, and those who should lose might end up turning the tables. Anyhow, the brigade from the Purple Moon Army finally came across netherworld military on this day. This was also a small brigade. After noticing each other, they faced off for a short moment before immediately launching into an intense battle. This is my chance. Ling Han immediately charged toward the netherworld army. When coming across beings from the netherworld, everyone had a responsibility to battle against them. Moreover, it would be much easier to visit the heavenly phoenix divine maiden and strike a conversation with her if they developed camaraderie in battle. Beings of the netherworld were starkly different from beings of the immortal realm. All of them were surrounded by a sinister and eerie aura. They could be easily recognized with a glance. If the immortal realm was yang, then the netherworld would be yin. If the immortal realm was fire, then the netherworld would be water. These two realms were like the two sides of a coin. Their stark differences stemmed from the essence of their very being, and this wasn't a difference that could be erased. The members of the netherworld army were all humanoid, yet some of them had horns, while others had tails. Moreover, due to the sinister aura that surrounded them, they appeared completely different from the human forms of the demonic beasts from the immortal realm. Most of them wielded spears, while a few of them wielded swords or sabers. Their battle prowess ranged from the mountain river tier to the sun moon tier. The battle prowess of the Purple Moon Army was identical to their opponents. Thus, the battle was extremely intense and dangerous. Ling Han didn't speak, and immediately started to attack the enemies. He didn't wield his divine demon sword, and simply used his fists to smash his enemies into pieces. Although he wasn't using his most powerful techniques, he had already obtained a wisp of heaven's might. Thus, his fists naturally possessed a profound might. If his enemy weren't as powerful as him, they would be wounded if they were scraped, and they would be killed if they were hit. He was like a killing machine, and he was essentially able to kill an enemy with each punch. He placed their corpses in the Black Tower. He could use these to exchange merit points, so he naturally wouldn't waste them. After killing a dozen or so Netherworld soldiers, he finally attracted the attention of an elite. It was a Netherworld elite who was dressed in a full suit of armor. He brandished his spear as he charged toward Ling Han. Humph! There was a humph, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden also leaped over. There was a pair of phoenix wings that measured 50 kilometers in length on her back, and they possessed raging flames that could incinerate everything within 500 kilometers with a single flap. Tens of thousands of flaming feathers burst from the phoenix wings and shot toward the Netherworld elite. "I've got this place under control. You go somewhere else," the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said. TSK, are our hearts connected? She already knows to come over and protect her husband. Ling Han laughed loudly, and didn't linger around. He immediately charged toward the other Netherworld beings. Like a knife through hot butter, he easily massacred the weaker Sun-Moon tier elites. With his help, all of the weaker Sun-Moon tier elites were quickly killed. Right now, only the 7 consummate level elites remained. They had no desire to continue fighting, and they quickly retreated and fled into the distance. The Purple Moon Army pursued them for a while. However, elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier weren't easy to kill. In the end, they weren't able to kill any of them, and were only able to severely wound one of them. "Little brother, thanks for your help." The members of the Purple Moon Army thanked Ling Han after counting their losses. "Fighting against the Netherworld is everybody's responsibility," Ling Han said. He then turned to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and said, "Miss, thank you for helping me just then. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,